This episode of the Primal Scream Podcast is brought to you by It Works independent distributor Kathy Sculla. Have you tried that crazy wrap thing? It tightens, tones, and firms any area from the neck down. It Works also provides a wide variety of premium supplements, along with a full skincare line. I personally use their multivitamins and greens, and if you're interested in learning more about It Works products or the business opportunity, call or text Kathy at 319-360-2009, or go to her website, kathysculla.myitworks.com. That's CATHYSKALA.myitworks.com.
Wake up. It's time for Primal Scream.
Welcome back to the Primal Scream. I'm Matt.
I am Todd. Ow!
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Well,
change things up.
Todd's here. Todd's here. And Tim Sullivan's with us today. Tim, comedian, WWE fanatic.
That's right.
Yep. Fanatic is a good word. I think. Because I haven't met too many adults within my age range that have the level of following. I mean, you're after it. I mean, I was a Hulk Hogan fan. I remember being in junior high and high school.
I saw your Hulkamaniac
Headband?
headgear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was at WrestleMania this past year or whatever, so that was kind of like my bucket list thing. I always wanted to go to one of those.
Oh, you had never been to one?
I had never been to WrestleMania, yeah, so that was down in New Orleans, so it was a pretty good time, but I used to be a big, Macho Man was always my favorite when I was a kid, and I was like, back in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, anybody that went to school with me would know, I was the biggest wrestler. I got like my entire class interested in wrestling.
Sweet.
And I remember one time in 7th grade, I had told the kids, everybody in my class before the teacher came in, I said, hey, in the middle of class, I'm going to give this little sign, and that just find your partner, who you're going to team up, go against, and then we're just going to like start a battle royal. We're just going to start punching each other, like, fake punching and everything and doing all this kind of crazy stuff. And I said, I'll give the sign in the middle of class. We'll just do it out of the middle of nowhere, and then I'll give another sign, and then we'll just sit back down like nothing happened. And I had got all the guys in on it, and I was telling them before class, this is what we're going to do. And so I gave the sign, and then to my amazement, everybody in the whole classroom did it. Like even these girls, like these
they
nerds,
really did. They followed
everybody
through
got
it.
up and they started. And the teacher was like so frazzled. He was just like staring, like he didn't know what to do. He was like convulsing and everything. And we started. I even like body slammed a kid onto one of the science desks and everything. And then I gave him another sign just to sit back down. And then we just sit back down and looked at the teacher. And then he didn't know what to do. He like stopped convulsing and he was like, oh, okay, then now pay attention to what I have to say.
Nice.
Who was your teacher? I went to, I graduated in 93. You just had your 20th school and a reunion from Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
Who was your teacher that you did that to?
And it was in 7th grade. It was at Taft Middle School, and his name was Mr. Beach. And I have to. I think I take credit for. I don't know if it's good to take credit for it or not, but I take credit for giving him a nervous breakdown that year, and he actually couldn't finish the rest of the year because he had such a nervous breakdown. Because I used to hide in the science. He was also my homeroom teacher, but he was also like the science teacher, and I used to whenever I had class, I would hide in the science closets. They had these little closets where they kept all the stuff, so I would crawl in there and hide, and then in the middle of like class, I would just pop out and be like and pop out during a film or something like that. I would do all this crazy stuff, and then I remember one time then after Mr. Beach had to take some time off or whatever for having a nervous breakdown, I think it was because of that battle royal thing, he had the substitute, Mr. Bishop, and this poor guy, he was like kind of looked like Matlock or whatever. He's just like a real old guy, and we had some disappearing ink or whatever. We sprayed it like on the back of his coat, and then I didn't expect him to see it. We just thought it was funny for us to view. And then he must have took his coat off at one point during class, and he's like, "Oh my God, what the hell is going on here? This is my nice coat, you dang students," and everything. And then we felt so bad for him, because he's like so sad about his coat. But I knew I didn't feel that bad because I knew it was going to disappear, and it was not going to. But it was like he's going to be so happy later when he gets home and it's not on there, But then that same substitute, so I did something in his class, and then he got angry, and then he said, I don't want to see your face here tomorrow. You better not show your face here tomorrow. And then I didn't think he had that kind of authority, but I figured, okay, if he doesn't want to see my face here tomorrow. So I went home, and then my mom I don't know if you remember this cereal. It was called King Vitamin cereal.
Yes.
It was kind of like a generic kind of Captain Crunch in a certain way or whatever. But on the back of it, they had these little masks that you could cut out or whatever of like the king's face or whatever. So I cut out the king's face, and then I wore it into class the next day. And he's like, "What are you doing wearing that mask?" And I said, "You said you didn't want to see my face here tomorrow, so I'm wearing the King Vitamin mask." But I think that was the only person that ever probably wore a King Vitamin.
So from a super early age, you're already pushing those buttons. Being the comedian.
I had done it even earlier than that, and I used to go to St. Jude's Catholic school, and I didn't have a real. They didn't appreciate me there.
The nuns, the nuns that didn't appreciate it.
They didn't appreciate me too much there.
So you're Cedar Rapids born and bred then.
Yep. Yeah.
From the very beginning.
Yep. Cedar Rapids born and bred.
My wife.
You went out to San. You're going to do San Francisco.
My wife
thing.
is a wonderful woman. And she gave me, for a graduation present, my brother-in-law lived in Seattle. And so she got me Monday Night Football games, the Niners and the Seahawks, before the Seahawks were the shit. And that was like one of my fondest memories is going out to Seattle. But then later on we went out.
At the Kingdom? Was it at the Kingdom or was that at their new stadium?
No, in the new stadium.
Okay.
This is 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
So it's not too far removed. But then she and I went back and just walked around more of Seattle kind of sightseeing stuff, and I just fell in love with it. So he retired and came back to he's going to be coming back to the United States. And I was like, if you go to Seattle, I won't be heartbroken because then I can come visit you all the time. Because I thought Seattle was pretty fantastic. Did you like Seattle quite a bit?
Yeah, I really like the Pacific Northwest. It's pretty nice up there. This town that because initially I started living in Seaside, Oregon, and then eventually I lived in Astoria, Oregon for a little bit before I moved to Portland. And Astoria was where they filmed the movie The Goonies.
Goonies, yeah.
So one night I got drunk and went up to the Goonies house and did a little truffle shuffle or whatever.
The truffle shuffle.
I saw that posting on your Facebook page. I was like, oh, we're going to have a dude on here who's roughly our age. And I'm going to understand he's going to understand all of my little things that I talk about.
That's the best part.
Oh, yeah, being able to hang out with someone like that. Oh, okay, so, and today's July, you know that this podcast is going to be a little energized.
Because
we're just now telling you the date. It's July 11th. Yeah? Yes or no? Yeah?
Good guess.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
July 11th. I'm terrible with the date, so every podcast I guess.
Yeah.
It's a dartboard. What's going on in the world today? We like to timestamp the podcast with like current events, like really quickly, like what's kind of the big thing that's happening right now?
LeBron James just went to
LeBron James. That's right.
That's a big one. I'm legitimately shocked, only because it was such a spectacle. I didn't know he owns ESPN because they did quite the showdown for him when he left Cleveland to go to Miami.
Well, I mean, everybody was hating on him, right?
No, did you think that was like overly? I mean, for CNN to devote so much time for this one guy, would they have done? They probably would have done that for Jordan too if he was going to move somewhere else. But I just remember watching that, going, "This is just such bullshit." It's not just. I mean, it's just so theatrical and so over the top. And then when he went down to Miami, and he and his two other guys, Wade and
we gonna win one? No, not one. We gonna win two? Did you ever see that?
They came out of the floor, and there was smoke and shit.
Just really gaudy.
Oh, it was really over the top. And I'm a huge sport. You know me. I'm a huge sports fan. But I was just kind of going, come on, this is too much for me. But there was a big deal that he left Cleveland, so that he's going back is almost like.
Do you think he's really going to get the love?
Oh, they have people like out in the streets with signs saying, "Please come back."
Because there was serious hate when he left.
Yeah, there was serious hate. But I seen a guy on TV today that said, "Well, I understand. It was just a business decision that he made, but it's good to have him back now." It's like you weren't thinking that back,
5 years ago.
You fucker. What else is going on in the world?
I don't know. Blackwater is getting a lot of shit still. Have you heard about that?
No. What's going on with Blackwater?
Yeah, they were awarded a $1 billion contract.
It's good to be the CEO of Blackwater.
By the State Department. Yeah, I forget his name. But see, what's weird is they keep calling it Blackwater, but I thought Blackwater changed its name to like X something or other, some weird thing.
I had never heard that.
But I mean, they're just too sketchy. I mean, they killed a bunch of civilians and they got off on it because the contract they signed said that no matter what they fucking do when they're in Iraq, they can they're not going to be held liable because they're there to protect people and end of the story kind of thing. So I was just surprised to hear their name at all because I thought they were. The CEO changed the name to something else because he was getting so much bad press. But obviously, they're a very successful and lucrative private army.
Have you ever been overseas?
No. I just ordered my passport the other day, so.
But now you're ready.
Yeah,
you're ready to go.
I'll be ready here as soon as it comes in August. Here, I should be ready to go.
Yeah, that being overseas. I was in the military for a little while, and being overseas it's just so jarring because it's like for the first time you're away from really anything that you're familiar with.
Well, I think I always look at it like this: like if something went down, how long is it going to take me to walk back home? You know, even if I'm like in Seattle or something like that, you know, maybe it'll take a month or something. I don't know how long it would take, but it's going to take me a while if I'm overseas. So I always panic about that.
And it may involve a boat.
Try to imagine. Yeah, then I've got to get a boat. I don't like anything to do with the ocean.
I was going to say, the last podcast, not the last podcast, sorry, when we were in Great River Brewery, Matt started talking to these poor brewers about
I just dropped it on them.
Drones delivering beer.
Yeah, this is how I said it. I was like, so, have you heard about the drones that deliver pizza in Russia?
And these two guys are just like, dude, we fucking make beer. What the fuck are you talking about? So Amazon is all over trying to get their delivery system back up. The FCC shut them. Is it FCC?
Yeah, I don't know. Sure, it's a government something.
Federal Communication, that's like more radio stuff.
FAA?
FAA.
Yeah, probably FAA.
Thank you, Tim. And Amazon's big about pushing this drone delivery system, and so they're trying to really push it through to make sure they can do it.
They said they can get the packages there in like a half an hour, but I'm trying to figure out how that works. Like, does the guy at like the Amazon factory like put it in and then stick it to the drone and then they send it off? And then where like
you would think that Amazon hubs would have to be all over the place.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm wondering. They don't just have like one big store there.
You would think. And plus, there's shit that I buy, it's heavy. I mean, the drone that's going to have to deliver some of the shit I buy for the podcast is going to have to be...
Hey, look, somebody got a plasma television.
Maybe not those things. But like the little cable.
Well, then what happens if like, somebody's getting like a package of adult toys or something like that and a lightning strikes the thing and then next thing you know, it's raining dildos down there. So, I don't know.
What a great story that would be, though.
Exactly.
My 6-year-old was traumatized by all these porn star molds of vaginas. Have you seen those? It's just the butt and a vagina. Have you seen those?
Actual women or something like that.
I remember watching. I
have 3 of them. It's 3 different.
Real Sex on HBO had an episode where they showed them making a mold. I want to say it was Jenna Jameson.
It could have been, sure.
And so there was another guy who was there who they were doing a mold of his penis. But they show him going down on her to get her excited before they did the mold.
Right, because the clitoris has to be
right, but so then my point is like, so I am going to fuck a piece of plastic. I try to wrap my head around how that is going to be different than like my hand. Do you know what I'm saying? It just like sounds really odd. Like I guess I'm outside the picture. I'm just trying to think of like if I somebody.
So what you're saying is your hand is very similar to Jenna Jameson's excited clitoris.
Thank you very much, Tim. Especially in my mind. In my mind, it's incredible.
Are we not close enough friends that I could borrow your hand for a little bit? Is that too much?
It's way too much.
I know we've been friends for 20 years, but not at the Jenna Jameson.
No, and I do notice you had that little landing strip there on your hand too. So
yeah. Guided in, baby. Just guided it right on in there. I was going to tell you also that we could stay on that topic for quite a while. So Washington State, going back to Seattle, is going to be legalizing marijuana pretty soon, it looks like.
Oh, they just did.
Right, was it 2 days ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just did.
So there's already blowback from employers.
Sure.
Contacting their employees saying, if right away you ran out and you started ingesting marijuana, we're going to start doing drug testing.
And that's what I've been talking about.
Yeah, he's been talking a lot about the idea of we're both very pro marijuana people.
Sure.
But how do you regulate? So I'm on a forklift all day long, or I'm at security somewhere.
Right. Well,
sure.
How do I do that?
Did you hear about the guy that was first in line there at Washington? He was the first one to get the or not medical, I guess anymore, just the marijuana. He was the first one to buy legal marijuana in Washington State. They had him on TV. He's wearing his tie-dye shirt. He's cheering. the next day he gets fired from his job because he's a security officer and they drug test you there. So it's like, if anything, you shouldn't have been the first dude in line. You know, now
or you can
That's
but then don't smoke it. Try to hold off.
Well, and he put a thing on Craigslist the next day that said, "Lost my job due to the thing" or whatever, and then in hashtag it said, "Still number one though."
Winning.
Yeah. Winning. Yeah, well, that's the logistics of, or that's the real reality of a state going.
Yeah, because I guess I wish I knew more about marijuana use. Having used it myself, I'm trying to think of, does the next day am I as impaired as I am if I had an all-nighter drinking and I wake up, I went to sleep at midnight after drinking a shitload of alcohol, and I woke up at 9 o'clock the next morning to go to work, or 8 o'clock to go to work. Am I more impaired then than I am if I smoked a couple bowls at midnight and went to bed nice and happy, and I woke up at 9 o'clock? Am I as impaired as that?
That's just the thing. You're right. How can you? Are you able to? Your motor skills.
Right.
Do you have the motor skills? Are you capable of acting sober? You know? But we don't have the tests. We've developed the tests. If you're drunk, if you've been drinking,
right,
you can go in and you do a piss test and you blow, right? You do the breathalyzer, and because we have those instruments to say, well, if you've reached this number,
right,
then you're incapacitated and you're fired. But with marijuana, we don't have that stuff. We don't have anything like that because marijuana sits in your body differently. It goes into your fat.
So marijuana is not in your bloodstream like alcohol is in your bloodstream?
It stays in your system. It registers as if you're high.
For a month.
So we just don't have the
there's
technology.
no way to find out a level
we don't
in
have
your
the
bloodstream
technology
like
yet.
alcohol does.
Something's going to have to be developed. And then
those
those
were working on something like that, or they had something to say you have more of a level in you than not. But I don't know. I think now I'm spacing out where I was going with that. Wait a minute.
That's okay.
But that would be difficult from an employer point of view.
That's legitimate.
Yeah, you don't want people showing up. You're going to smell like marijuana because it's very pungent.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to smell
possibly, unless you smoked, took a shower, put some deodorant on.
Okay. Well, I used to work around
vaporizer.
I used to work around a lot of guys that had the Whizzinator. You know, they had shit strapped to them.
What's the for a piss test?
The fake.
You got like Whizzinator.
The fake dick with urine in it. But there was guys that smoked marijuana all the time where I used to work, and they never got caught. So you're right. They don't have to necessarily smell like marijuana, but it is a pretty strong
But I do
odor.
think it would be messed up if they, because I heard they were trying to measure something, if they pulled you over or whatever, and then they said, well, you have it in your system, and then they charged you whatever. But if it turns out you really hadn't smoked it in maybe you hadn't even smoked it, you were just around people that did or something like that.
A contact high.
You know,
Smell it
and
off
so now you're getting kind of, I don't know. So because I think 20 days later, obviously it's not going to affect you, even if it's still in your system or whatever.
Also, I wonder just how long it does linger. Because there's been a YouTube video that's been kind of going around, a meme that's been going around with a guy who was pulled over at a alcohol checkpoint in Texas. And his window was rolled down like 3 or 4 inches. And the cop's like, roll your window down. He's like, I can talk to you. I can talk to you just this way. Why do I have to roll my window down? And the cop right away just gets pissed at this kid not following his direction, so to speak.
Right.
And so you're at alcohol checkpoint, you get out of your car. It's like, I don't have to get out of my car. I haven't done anything wrong. It's not within your legal right to ask me to leave my car because I haven't done anything. I'm going through your... so it's this whole thing of his phone is going in the seat next to him the entire time. So then they pull the car over, they pull him out. And throughout the whole thing, the kid is saying over and over again, "You're violating my rights. I didn't agree to leave my car. You're forcing me to remove myself from my car. I don't want a dog sniffing my car." I mean, so it's always legal steps. So it goes back
tap
to
dancing. You're tap dancing on the edge. You're on the precipice of sovereign citizen.
I have this joke, and it's sort of based on part on real life, but where I would say the cops, they would pull me over and they would always ask if they could search my car, and I never knew like what you could say back to them, like, no, you ain't searching my car. I don't want to piss them off anymore or whatever. So I took a criminal justice class at the community college to figure out, like, what kind of rules that they have to abide by. And I found out, like, in most, you probably know the law, the only way a cop can, like, legally search your car is if they have probable cause. And if they don't have probable cause, then they can't search your car.
Right.
So with that in mind, I decided, like, the next time a cop asks to search my car, I'm going to let him search. I'll say, go ahead, look around, see what you can find. But then people don't realize this part of law. Once the cop starts to search your car, you have the right to revoke that privilege at any time. So I wait till he gets into like a particular bag in my trunk, and then I come running up. Hey, no. I want you to put the bag back now and stop the search. And then he's like, well, wait a minute. That's kind of suspicious. I'm like, yeah, well, that's a law. I told you to stop, so you got to stop. And then he's like, well, wait a minute. If I have probable cause, then I can search that bag. I'm like, you don't have probable cause. And he's like, well, if I get the canines out here and they alert to something in there, then I will have probable cause. I'm like, all right, well, get the canines out here then. So it takes him like an hour to locate the canine cop wherever he's at. And then he finally shows up with his dog and his little shorts on. And then they circle around my car a few times. And then finally the dog does alert to something in my trunk. I don't know how he does it. He lifts up his paw, sticks out his wiener, whatever the dogs do. I'm not familiar with the alert system. But they're like, the dog alerted to something in your trunk. Now I'm going to find out what you've been hiding in that bag. And then he opens up the bag, and then just inside the bag is kibbles and bits. So he's like, son of a bitch. We're 2 hours on this guy. And then the thing is, you might wonder, well, why would a dog alert to kibbles and bits if he was sniffing for drugs? It's because I rub marijuana all over the kibbles and bits. So it's just my own way to get back at the cops.
And nobody notices the dog ate everything. The dog ate it all.
The cops all the way back to the police station. You son of a bitch!
Yeah, make us sit on the road for 2 hours. I can do the same thing to them. I don't got anywhere to be.
We've had that conversation about sovereign citizen. Like, you've seen those YouTube videos of people that say they know their rights. They go in, they have certain legal representation or paperwork saying, I'm not an employee of the corporation known as the United States of America. So they separate themselves from our rule of law. There's a whole series of YouTube videos.
It's crazy, and they've gotten out of law cases. They've gotten out of paying taxes. I mean, there's some people who have had some legitimate.
Some people have really lucked out, but you don't know what the follow through is. You don't know what 6 weeks from now what happens to them. But it's really interesting. Like, what don't we know about law? So it's great that you.
Well, yeah, and because, I mean, technically if they have probable cause, then they don't have to ask your permission. But if they ask your permission, you don't have to give it to them. And the only way they can really search is if they have the probable cause.
But can't they just make up anything for probable cause?
Maybe, but also here's what I found out, too, is that if you give them permission, they like to put you in the back of the cop car so that if they are getting, like, close to something or whatever that you're nervous about, then you can't yell at it. You can't be like, hey, stop, or whatever. And
revoke the privilege.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So they have their ways to try to keep you from
manipulating the system.
Now, dude, this is a general question. Hopefully, get some comments on YouTube about this. Do dogs sniff out pot because it's so pungent, or do they smell the chemical of THC? I mean, what is it about marijuana that dogs smell?
Well, I don't know. It's
hard for me to imagine because I mean we have talked about this plenty of times. Is you can get a THC sucker now. It's like one dose of THC for somebody. And I was like, well, how could a dog smell THC in a sucker? If I buy a cherry sucker that's covered in sugar and candy, cherry flavored, and it's infused with THC, how could a dog sniff that out?
Well, I mean, if they can, sniff a person's scent through the woods,
right? Or smell cancer. Dogs smell cancer. Yeah. What the hell is that all about?
In a form, that's death. They're smelling death. They're smelling decay of some sort. God, don't you think?
That's morbid as hell.
Should we move right into the horror movie clip?
They smell death.
They smell it.
Because I'm going to be going to Colorado. I'm very interested to see if a sucker would be something that would be a big deal.
And you can Google it, but do you really want to trust
Google?
Do you really want to trust Google to
or who's following you on Google to see what you're looking to do on Google?
I'm your employee or employer, Todd. I noticed that you Google. There was a guy that I worked with at the plant, and one day he just said, "Hey, I just found out my grandfather died. I gotta go right now." So what's the supervisor to do? Yeah, see ya. So he leaves. He takes off. comes back the next day or a couple days later, and he gets greeted by HR. We searched your search history because you were on our computers at work.
On their system.
On our system. And you Googled obituaries for 3 hours. So he was finding people who had died who he could use as an excuse to get out of work.
If you're that unhappy with your job, you should just quit. What the fuck? Why would you?
So here's the great part. They said, they go, okay, we're going to make this easy on you. We will not pursue this any further, and you can come back to work. We have a few simple questions. And he's pissed because he's so defensive. He knows he's fucked.
Yeah.
But he's so defensive, he does this. He goes, well, fuck, like what? What are you going to ask me? Give me the name of the person who died. This is bullshit. Dude, if it was your grandfather, you would be able to rattle off the goddamn name in 2 seconds. Okay, let me go to the next question. Where did he live? I don't have to answer these goddamn questions. Okay, well then you're fired.
Yeah.
See ya.
That's why I moved to Seattle.
No. The best part another good part about Seattle is the REI building there has a 60-foot climbing wall right when you walk in the door. It's fucking fantastic. You know what REI is there, Matt?
No, what the fuck's REI?
It's a rock climbing kind of like adventure kind of magazine.
Okay, so you're telling me that a rock climbing thing had a rock climbing thing at it.
You know what? Think of active endeavors in Iowa City, right? We love active endeavors, right? And so this REI building, which is their flagship store, their main store, when you walk in, has this huge rock climbing wall, all encased in glass before you even walk into the building itself.
Tim, I'm going to put my dickhead hat on for a second, so bear with me.
You're going to be an asshole.
Hey, did you know that at the Ford dealership, they have a fucking car at the Ford dealership? I mean, like a big Ford car at the dealership.
Like a F-150?
Like I couldn't fucking believe it.
Could you climb on it?
You're such a dick. God, you're terrible.
Dude, when you said that to me, I couldn't help but see that visually in my head.
It's a very outdoor. You wouldn't go to Shields and expect to see one thing in particular. REI had this incredible climbing wall when you walked in the door. I thought it was awesome.
I would love to actually see it, but just
don't. No, you don't. You're an asshole. Don't even worry about it.
The way you described it, I thought, you know what? Yeah, Ford probably has a car at the Ford dealership.
You're a fucker. Tim, how did you? Let's focus on the person who's important right now.
Great segue. Let's move away from us.
How did you get started in comedy? We've had Jeff on. We've had Doug Thompson on. How did you get started in comedy? In this crazy ride, it looks like you've been on for a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I was going to be a comedian since I was a little kid. I remember, I seriously think I was like 3 or 4. That's one of my first memories I had because I grew up with a big family. I got 3 brothers and 8 sisters.
Oh, we've seen the YouTube videos, buddy. Jesus, okay, God Almighty.
Are you the youngest?
I'm not sure which is worse, the brothers or the sisters.
Yeah, but I mean, 8 sisters. That was pretty tough. But yeah, no, I'm right in the middle. I'm the 7th child, so. But one night my parents
so all of the torment and torture that your sisters put on you, you could apply that to your brothers.
Yeah, well, I have 1 older brother and then 2 younger brothers, and then my youngest brother, he's the youngest of the whole family, so he kind of didn't come along. He got the tail end of everything or whatever, but yeah, the 8 sisters was hard because try to use a bathroom when you live with 8 sisters and stuff, and that was horrible. You have to go outside and try to. You never got to use a bathroom basically when you live with 8 sisters. Much. I mean, there was always some girl in there. The amount of time women spend in a bathroom was terrible. So,
but so many people. I mean, and the whole idea of bathrooms, but like Stephen Colbert talks about being number 13 of 13 kids, and I'm like. There's 15 people in a house? What are you talking about? How is that? I can't wrap my head around. I mean, I get upset when I have 4 people or 5 people in my house.
That wasn't so bad in the house. Wasn't so bad. My dad actually built the house. It was all right. But when we would go on vacation, that was when it was a real trip because...
How could you go on vacation? I couldn't afford that vacation.
I know. I don't know how we did. I don't know how my parents did it. But we had this... We bought like the hugest van that you could possibly get with like extended back end and everything. And then it had had four seats, you know.
I could see his poor Timmy in the back.
No, that's exactly what happened. My dad, he was like a carpenter. He knew how to build everything. So what he did is in the back end, there was like a little room for a trunk, you know, back there.
Okay.
And he had enough room for all the kids except for me and my brother. So what he did is we would put all the luggage down in the back of the van, and then he built like this board to go over the top of it. He put like a blanket over the top of that, and then a jug of lemonade up there, and then that's where me and my brother would sit the whole vacation, like with our head like up against the ceiling of the van or whatever, you know. And we weren't strapped in or nothing back then. People didn't care or whatever. But so we would drive all the way to New York or whatever, like in the back of the van. And then anytime my brother or whatever would need some lemonade, we'd have to be the ones to hand up the lemonade to him. And then my brother Randy would always have to go pee like every 10 seconds, and my dad would be getting pissed and like, "Don't give Randy any more lemonade." Like,
God damn it, Randy.
and then we'd take a trip to like Colorado or whatever, and my mom would get freaked out being by the mountains, so she'd always think that this would work. She would always like lean in towards, she would be sitting in the passenger seat as my dad would drive in, and she'd lean in towards my dad if she was on the side of the mountain, thinking that was going to help keep the van, you know?
The whole entire
and then,
van.
Seriously, this did happen one time, and we didn't find out like the severity of it till after, but my dad was like following a semi down, like we were Pikes Peak or something like that in Colorado, and the semi was like going so slow. My dad had to keep like applying the brakes, and then eventually the brakes went out on the van with all of us, like 12 kids in the van. And so like he was like coming up on the semi, and then so and it was like one lane road, you know, going, so he had to like swerve around the truck, and there was like cars coming the other way, honk honk, and then we like did the whole thing going until finally he got the brakes like cooled off enough. But we almost all
Makes my heart pump in my chest just thinking about it.
I think of a couple things because I'm a parent and I have 3 kids, and I almost lose my mind with 3 kids. So with all of your siblings, how did your parents stay sane? Have they given you any? I mean, because you are a father figure now.
Yeah.
And from all the postings on Facebook, it looked like you have a great time. Mm-hmm. What did they give you any advice? Like, hey man, I don't want to hear any bitching from you. We had X amount of kids.
The one kid.
You have to take care of one.
Yeah, well, I mean, they brought it on themselves, you know. It's hard to feel too sorry for them, you know. But my mom,
there was a lot of love in that
and
house.
I couldn't feel too
Dad
bad
was a
for
love
my
machine.
Dad, because I guess when my mom and dad got married, my mom had like told my dad like, I want to have 25 kids, and then my dad was like, all right, well, I guess we better get started now then. So
your oldest sibling is how old?
If I can remember her name, it's hard enough to think about that. I think she's like 47 or 8 or somewhere around there.
Oh,
maybe.
so there's not too huge a gap between all you kids.
Yeah, so I think it's anywhere. I think their age ranges are like from 48 to 25 or something like that.
So your youngest sibling is 25?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
Oh, I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, you seem
my
almost
brother.
stunned.
My brother had twins, and then I was like watching. I'm a huge tennis player and fan. I was watching Wimbledon a couple weeks ago, and Roger Federer has twin girls and twin boys, and my brother has twin boys. And my wife and I look at each other, and we're just like, we barely hold on with the 2 children that we have.
Well, you have 3. Junior's grown and he's in the Air Force now. Now you have
so I don't count him. He's long gone, so I don't count him.
He's an adult.
I love him, but I don't count him because he's But I have 2 knuckleheads still, and I'm just like, how do we survive with these 2? And I'm just trying to wrap my head around driving in a van with a plethora of children.
I get anxiety just taking my kids to Adventureland or to a water park. I couldn't imagine having a extended van full of little life forms.
You must get to the point though where it's like, so the oldest helps take care of some of the younger ones, or
I remember one of the most nerve-wracking moments was when we were in New York and we had to get on the subway because my dad was like prepping us all, you know, before we got to the subway for like a day or whatever. All right, here's what we do. Okay, we're all gonna hold hands. Sure. We're all gonna get on. If somebody doesn't get on, we get off at the next stop. All this like crazy stuff or whatever. Get off at the next stop. I'll get on here. So we had like this whole routine down in case anything went wrong getting on the subway. But trying to shove 12 kids on to the subway in New York.
As people are coming off.
Yeah, people are coming off and trying to.
One of Louis C.K.'s last episodes of his show was he and his daughters talking about all the preparation they do if they get stuck on a subway. You stay there and we'll circle back and find you. and he shoots a scene of that happening, and it's one of his daughters who's kind of quirky, who does it on purpose. The doors are closing, and she steps out, and the doors close, and he's talking to his other daughter. Holy shit! And so then it's like it's you can prep for it, and then it looks like the reality of how, oh my God, my child is by themselves on the goddamn subway.
Yeah.
It sounds, I mean...
Well, and being the comedian of the family or whatever, too, I think that's something that people would expect from me to do something like that. But here's the thing. I remember one year we went to Canada, and my dad says, okay, they stop you at the border. They might ask everybody in the car a question or whatever just to make sure you're on the, like that this guy isn't like kidnapping a daycare full of kids or something like that. So they say... I think at the one point I was actually able to sit not in the back. I was maybe got fandangled one of my sisters so I could get up to trade places with her and sit up in the middle seat or something like that. And we get my mom and I'm always the one to blame, by the way, in the family for some reason. My mom always blames me for no matter what goes wrong. Like
it's all your fault, Tim.
My youngest brother, he could do anything right, and the only reason he did that is because you told him to or whatever. So. And so we stop, and so she's telling me, don't do anything smart there at the border when we get up there or whatever. So my dad pulls up to the border, and they say, all right, where are you headed? Well, we're going to go up to Niagara Falls, and we're going to drive through there, and blah, blah, blah. And okay, and so can you roll the window down in the back so I could talk to the so-and-so back there or whatever? And so, and my dad had warned us, only say something if she's talking to you. Don't say anything, just let whoever she's talking to, So she looks right at my younger brother John and starts saying something to him. So I'm not saying anything. I'm just being quiet. I'm being good. And then she says to him, she goes, "So do you know these people?" And then my brother John's like, "Oh no, they kidnapped me." And then I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "John, shut the hell up. Just tell her that." And then he's like, "Oh no, I know. I'm okay. Yeah, they're whatever." And then so eventually, like, we get through that or whatever. And then as we're driving, then my mom's like, "Timmy, that was your fault because you're the one that probably told John to do that." And I'm like, "No, I didn't. I'm the one that tried to tell him to be right." So no matter what happened, I was always the one that got blamed.
Is Timmy the go-to?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, everybody calls me Timmy.
I said Timmy earlier, and I was like, oh, it might be too close home.
Yeah.
You called him Timmy? So a grown man
I said, Timmy, you
called
can be
another grown man Timmy.
I said, Timmy, you can be in the back. I assumed it was
I have
Timmy.
a really good friend whose name is Tim also, and I've never called him Timmy. In fact, he has told me...
Ooh, I'm going to call him Timmy next time we hang out.
Well,
I'm
he's
all
told me
over that shit.
There's a couple of guys that I work with who give off a very strange vibe. They're a little bit different. Nice fellas, really great guys, but they give off kind of a weird vibe, like child molester vibe. Oh, but they're nice guys. But you look at them and you're like, maybe there's a pit in your basement. But when they say, they love calling, and they don't ever say Tim. They call him Timmy, and it gives him full body shivers. Like he feels like he's a little boy again.
Right.
And the child molester has come to,
Well, it's like my dad's name is Richard. And so I remember one time, this is when I was a junior. No, junior high school. And a good friend of mine calls him the Dick from, what's that John Belushi movie? Why am I blanking? It's a college movie where they food fight. Why am I thinking? I'm blanking on the movie.
Animal House.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so the guy in there called the Dick was his name. And so my buddy calls my dad the Dick all the time. It makes my dad laugh.
Well, there's also Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks.
Okay.
And there's Rick the Dick.
It's Bachelor Party then. It's not Animal House.
Tom Hanks
Bachelor
goes,
Party.
"So do you go by Rick or Mr. Dick?"
Well, one time I said to my dad, I said, did anybody ever... And it was a total casual, and he and I are very much alike. We're very laid back and kind of quiet. And I was like, did anybody ever call you Dick at all, ever? He goes, no one ever called me Dick. And I was like... I got it.
Okay.
I'm good to go.
Sorry, Papa.
Yeah, so they still call me Timmy. Everybody in my family, they'll still call me Timmy. They think it's weird.
You're okay with that?
I mean, it's fine. I mean, sometimes I even sign my name Timmy, so.
So you always knew you were going to be a comedian. It sounds like from
so I never got to that story.
That's okay. Go for it.
So one night my parents, they rarely had company over or whatever, and they decided to have company over like one Friday night or whatever, and they said, all of you kids, go in the bedroom and hang out back there, and don't come out. We're having company over. And so we had a little black and white TV that we got to watch. And I remember first James Bond movie came on NBC, and it was the one where the guy has the metal teeth and he bites through the bars or whatever.
Sure. Moonraker.
And we were watching that, and then the news came on, and then we were all playing in like my bedroom, and then after that it was the first time I ever seen Johnny Carson come on, and I never really seen somebody like telling jokes before on TV. Like, it just seemed like the craziest thing, somebody that's like telling jokes, and Johnny Carson would like never laugh at his jokes. I thought it was like crazy. I could hear everybody else laughing, and he would just stand there like, well, I don't know why this is funny or whatever.
Right.
So I just became like a huge Johnny Carson fan, and I was like, told everybody, I'm going to grow up to be Johnny Carson. That's all I want to be is Johnny Carson. You know, I didn't know there's a job called comedian. I just wanted to be Johnny Carson, you know? So like I would always do goofy things all throughout school. When I was at St. Jude's, I remember one year we had a substitute there, and I thought it was weird because all the smart kids in the class were got to sit at like a table with the substitute teacher, and she was teaching them like extra things, and she told us like dumb kids just to read some books or whatever and mind to our own business. So I was like, shouldn't we be the ones getting the extra?
That's fair,
you know. But so. And she wasn't like paying any attention to us. So what I did is I went out to we had a locker, and I went out to my locker and I got like a sweatshirt and some tennis shoes. And then I came back in and I had like the Sesame Street book. And then I said, all right, class. And we had like these little tree stumps that had like some carpet on it that we would sit around. So I got all the rest of the kids to gather around the carpet, and I started reading them like the Sesame Street book. And then I started changing my shoes, like acting like I was Mr. Rogers. And I put like this, you know, took on my sweater and put on my thing. It's a beautiful day, isn't it, kids? And then the teacher's still not giving us any attention. I'm just trying to do whatever I could do to get her attention. And then so finally there's a piano in the room, and I start playing like, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. And then finally she kicked me out of the classroom and everything. So I used to do a lot of crazy stuff back then, and there's still people that come up to me nowadays and be like, damn, I remember you from St. Jude's when you were doing that crazy stuff or whatever.
Really?
So it's like I was always doing something goofy or whatever. And then I went to a whole new school where I didn't know anybody, and then one of my first things I remember doing there that people really appreciated me for was we had like a hula contest one day in class for some reason. I don't know, it was like beach day or something. And this is before I had Mr. Beach for a teacher, but so we had to put on a hula skirt, and we had like a hula contest, and whoever could do the best hula dance. And then I ended up getting into the finals, and I took on the autistic kid, and he was awesome. He like people just enjoyed watching him because he was just like so crazy out there. Like, and I knew he was going to be a tough competitor. I was like, there's no way. I was like, damn it, why did I have to go against him? There's no way. But
these savants, they're so trained.
Yeah, he was awesome at the hula moves. Like people couldn't stop laughing. I was like, dang it, he's really cramping my style. So then I don't know. I pulled something out of my ass because I did this hula move, but I did it to like, remember the Itsy Bitsy Spider song? So I started doing like the Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the water, spout down, came the rain, washed the spider. So that ended up winning it. I won the damn hula contest or whatever. And from then on, I was golden. Everybody would, that was like 6th grade and Taft. And then from then on, I went on to obviously run Mr. Beach out of the school and do some all this other crazy stuff. I used to, when I was in like 7th grade, because I was always a big wrestling fan, as we were talking about. So I had this like fake championship wrestling belt. And my coach, I guess he thought it was cool or whatever. So one day he says, all right, Tim, you bringing your wrestling belt today or whatever? So we went up and talked to the referee before the match. And he says, hey, is it all right if Tim wins his match? He's going to go over to the timekeeper's table, and then he's going to pick up his belt. Is that cool? And the referee's like, yeah, do you want me to hold it up and show everybody that it's for the belt or whatever? I'm like, all right, well. So then I wrestled this kid, and I beat him in like 20 seconds. He had like, his headgear came off, and he had like blood coming down his face and stuff. I don't know how that happened. But so then the kid couldn't go on. He couldn't like finish the match or whatever because he was too injured. And so I quick ran over to the table, and then I held up the belt, and I held it up in one hand, and I turned to the other side of the crowd and hold it up and everything. So people always thought that was like the most awesome thing and everything. And then I got pissed at one guy because he beat me at this other school. So I went after he beat me. I was a big fan of Brutus the Barber Beefcake. He was like this guy that like put a sleeper hold on.
Hell yeah.
Always cut the hair at the end.
So I went over to the timekeeper's table, and I found like the trainer's tackle box or whatever, and I found some scissors in there, and I start pretending like I'm going to cut the guy's hair after the match, and I'm like pointing at him and all this like crazy stuff. I was always doing something where, so I always knew I was going to be a comedian. Ever since that Johnny Carson, and I was always funny, I just always knew I was going to be a comedian. And then when I was like 12 years old or 13, I rode the bus from middle school down to downtown Penguins Comedy Club. And I went in there and I said, hey, any chance I could get on to do a couple jokes or whatever? And they're like, you're 12 or whatever, however you get the hell out of here. You shouldn't even be in here. So then I came back. What I started doing is I started writing jokes at that age. And I figured by the time I'm 18, at least I'll have some material to perform. So I came back when I was 18. I was like, hey, any chance I could just do, a few minutes or whatever? And I asked them a few times, and then they would always tell me no. And then they said, come back after the 1st of November. And so I was like, all right. So I came back after the 1st of November, and I was like, can I do some time now? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, well, you guys said if I come back after the 1st of November, you're going to let me do some time. And he goes, no, we said the 1st of never is what we said. And I was like, oh, shit. So
I heard what I wanted to hear, buddy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then
was that Jeff? It wasn't Jeff.
No, it wasn't Jeff, because Jeff lived in Atlanta at the time, so he was never there. He just had like some managers that worked there for him or whatever. And but eventually, I think they felt sorry for me, so they set up like an open mic, because there was never any open mics when I got started in '96 or whatever it was. But I tried to get started earlier than that. But so eventually, they set up like a little open mic, and then I started driving to Madison, Wisconsin every Wednesday. And I would do like 5 minutes in front of like 12 people or whatever at the open mic up there, because that was the closest open mic I could find anywhere.
Really?
So I would drive back and forth every Wednesday to Madison, Wisconsin. And then eventually, as I mentioned, I got like one gig in South Dakota, and then moved out to Oregon and got that month worth of work. And then eventually I met comedians out there, and they started bringing me along. So
Wow. Holy shit, Tim.
Can you
that's
imagine?
a great drive. I mean, you hear stories like that, though. Somebody says, this is what I should be doing.
Right.
And so I don't defer from that. Life may take me a couple of different directions, but driving to Madison every Wednesday to do 10 minutes would deter me.
You and I were talking earlier before Tim showed up about just like the scheduling people to come on, and I was talking about how I get a little anxiety about making sure everything's planned just right. Mm-hmm. And the juggling act that you would have to do between your job that you have that's putting food on the table for you and trying to find a place that you can do open mic at, the time it takes to get there, you're a full-time student. I mean, there's so much to have a relationship.
yeah, and I mean, even when I first got started, I was working at the power plant, 40 hours a week or more sometimes, and I was living in Iowa City, so I actually drove from Iowa City
That's a haul.
to Palo, and then all the way back or whatever. But so then at one point they laid me off. They were getting rid of some people or whatever, so they laid me off, and then but then a few months later they brought me back on again, and so I started working. Then a few months after that, then they laid me off again. So I was like, well, damn, if I'm gonna get laid off again at a job, I might as well try to really do something that I wanted. So that's why I came up with that thing. I got to move to some city. I just wanted to move far away from Iowa, and so I picked New York, Seattle, Miami, LA, or whatever. And like I said, Seattle came up, so that's why I called that guy, and he ended up having some work out there for me.
I think part of it is the key is population. As much as we love Cedar Rapids, we don't even have 200,000 people here. And so, I mean, you don't have the opportunity. It's like when you get people like, oh, God, this restaurant opened and then it's closed. And this restaurant, we're a blue-collar town. You don't have a lot of opportunities to go out and do stuff. That Penguins has been here for 25 years and being successful is pretty amazing. You know what I mean? When it comes to Seattle, San Francisco, New York, when you have millions of people, you're gonna pull people in.
Well, and even when I moved out to Portland, I was able to get into a couple of different commercials and some little movies and things like that. Like I went on an audition for like my first movie, and I went up the stairs to go audition for it or whatever. And then I got so nervous, I walked back down to my car, and I was like, screw this. And then I was like, no, if I don't go audition for this, I'm never gonna have enough guts to do this or whatever. So I went back and auditioned for it, and I got the role in this, like it was like an independent movie or whatever. And so it ended up being like the first thing that I ever auditioned for, that I actually got like one of the main roles in this movie or whatever. It was kind of crazy, and then I ended up getting like a lot of commercials opportunities there and stuff like that. So yeah, there was a lot more opportunities, outside of Iowa, which was kind of the big thing that I was trying to do.
Well, I mean, you're still working awfully hard, and you're still, I would say, trying to legitimately break into things. But when you realize situations like you opening for Dave Chappell, or do those catch you off guard? Like, holy shit, I've actually kind of, I'm getting to the point where
do you feel like you've made it, or at what point do you feel like, Yeah.
No.
Oh my God. I've actually.
I mean, I've done a lot of stuff that because I guess the thing I'm proudest about is that I always told people I was going to be a comedian. Since I was a little kid, I said and my family and people would laugh at me. Oh yeah, right. And I always told them I'm going to be a comedian, and so the thing that I'm proud about, even if I'm not the most well known or the highest paid comedian, is that I paid to be a comedian, to travel around and tell jokes, and I actually made it happen. So even if I've never, become Johnny Carson or whatever the hell else I want to do, I get paid to be a comedian. So, I mean, in a way, you can't always look at the next thing. You have to try to enjoy a little bit where you're at. So, I mean, there's numerous things I want to do, and you get so frustrated in this business, that you want to quit and give up, but
I know you. I'm sure you have goals that we're not aware of, but from the stand-up that I've seen that you've done and hearing some of the accomplishments that you've done as well, you should be pretty happy with what you've up to this point. I mean, I'm sure you have loftier goals like we all do, but I mean, Matt and I would love to be paid to do this podcast on a regular basis, but we're not there yet. But we'll just keep doing it until something better else happens, and we're going to be happy enjoying what we're doing.
It's a unique situation. Anytime somebody figures out what truly makes them happy, the balls it takes for anybody to say, I'm not going to do the status quo. I'm not going to work at the power plant and that's going to be my thing. Every morning I wake up, I go there, I come home, I eat, I sleep, I go back, anytime somebody can branch out. I mean, when I went to the military and left Iowa, to me, I thought, wow, I actually decided, all right, I want to see a little bit more of the world. I've made a decision for myself. I'm going to go live somewhere else. Not a lot of people even have the balls to do that. True. Even to move out of the city or the state or... Yeah,
I mean, the majority of the people that you meet, rarely leave town. I mean...
So what brought you... I mean, you left... Was it family that brought you back?
Well, let's see what happened as I lived in Oregon, and then the girl that I was friends with, that I was living with, eventually I started dating, and then me and her kind of had some, mostly she had some issues that I felt bad for her for, but anyway, so I had to get away from her. I moved down to Los Angeles with my buddy down there, and then I was like kind of broke at that point. I didn't have a lot of things because I basically left him with this girl, and then so he kind of took me in and let me stay with him for a little while, and then it just got to be where I was still so broke that I needed to like regroup and kind of gather myself again. So I moved back to Iowa, came back here, got like a part-time job delivering pizzas or whatever, still doing the comedy, but just trying to like save up some money and get back on my feet. And then I got back on my feet again, and then I moved to San Diego, trying to move to LA, but I had a sister that lived in San Diego, so it just made it kind of easier to move out there initially, and then found the place out there, and I really liked San Diego, so it ended up being really beautiful. So I stayed there for a while, and then I dated this girl and this other girl, and then we had all of our stuff in storage. We were going to move up to LA, and we were going to go on like tour for like 5 or 6 months. I had a bunch of shows booked, and then one thing or another happened, and I had to go out and get all of her stuff and give it back to her because we broke up. And so then I ended up being back in Iowa, and while I was back in Iowa, I figured, who knows how long I'm going to be back in Iowa, so I might as well try to do something at least a little bit productive while I'm here. So I decided to finish up my associate's degree or whatever at the community college.
Right.
So I did that. I got my associate's degree, and then I decided to go to, after I did that, I decided, well, why not keep going? So I went to Iowa. So as we speak, I'm still I'm a student at Iowa, and I'm traveling the country as a comedian and whatever else. So
yeah, and it's
so awesome.
And it's not like you're doing like one show here, one show there. You're tied in. I mean, when I looked at your schedule for September, October, you're going to Virginia Beach, you're going to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada with Mick Foley, NACA College. You're opening for Bob Saget at Riverside.
And dude, we're already planning.
Okay, yeah.
On being there. I've always heard. I told Doug this too. I saw Bob Saget on Entourage on an HBO TV show, and I had no idea he was that fucking crazy and dirty.
Yeah,
which I loved
because you're so used to seeing Bob Saget as Full House or
so corny and stuff like that.
Yeah, corny. Yeah. That's the epitome of it. It's corny. And so when I saw him, the way he talked, I was like, oh, he's like everybody else. You know, it's
and
like, oh my gosh.
I kind of discovered that a little bit early on because I was always a big Norm Macdonald fan, and Norm Macdonald did this movie Dirty Work or whatever. Bob Saget was like the producer and I think part writer or whatever of that movie. And Norm Macdonald had kind of said the same thing where, you know, everybody has this image of Bob Saget, but I try to tell him, you know, it's a lot different than what he's on America's Funniest Videos or whatever. So yeah, I'm kind of excited for that too. I gotta imagine some people, it's quite a shock if they're going there and they think they're seeing, you know.
There's a big disclaimer on the website.
Danny Tanner or whatever.
There's a big disclaimer that says right here, it says, contains adult language and subject matter, recommendation for a mature audiences only. But when I saw the thing, it was like, this is, again, blue collar Iowa thing, $260, a free night stay, a hotel room, and they got the glass shower walls, which are sick.
I don't get the whole glass shower wall. Oh, do you really want to see somebody?
Get your wife's breast up against it. I don't know. And so
it's great if your wife is like really wanting to like put on a show for you, but there's some things that's just like,
that's between you and your wife. I'm sorry about that. So you have a great hotel room, you have tickets to the show, and you have dinner for $260. That is nothing to drop on a situation like that. So
right, it sounds like a perfect night. If
and
you
my wife plays
like a
craps.
romantic,
my wife,
fun time.
No, she plays roulette like nobody's business. So
Roulette.
she always hooks us up.
She says she has a system, and she always seems to walk away with more money than what you came with.
She fucking kills it. We went to Tahoe.
Hey, it's fucking
2 years in a row.
odds.
Tahoe. And have you been in Tahoe before?
I think I've driven through there, but
okay, it's beautiful if you get a chance. But on the Nevada California line, there's a downtown Lake Tahoe. There is I want to say it's copper band of copper that cuts right down the middle of the street. And on the Nevada side, boom, Caesar's Palace pops up. On the other side, it's California, which is, you know, no gambling involved. And so when we got our cabin, my mom got our cabin together for us. My wife said, I really want to go down and gamble. And I was like, I don't do that, and I don't really know what it is. She goes, well, come down and just have a beer with me and just hang out. I was like, okay. And so she right away won $100, and she gave me like a $20 chip and goes, just go do something with this.
Here you go, pool boy.
And of course, sweet.
Keep your dick
so
hard.
Then
I'll be back for you
I
later.
know you drink for free. Of course, I didn't know that. So I'm drinking. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I went and spent my $20 on one hand of blackjack, and I'm done. And I came back, and she was just raking it in and paid for our entire vacation on one day, sitting there for 2 or 3 hours. So she's really she's good.
Does she have a certain number that she bets?
17 is kind of our number,
okay.
And she goes off with that. But
is that why you got that tattoo on your?
Just for her gambling? Yeah, absolutely. And so what she does is she plays the corners. So she has a number that she sticks with, and then she stacks up off of the corners of numbers that she thinks are going to work out okay.
Do you really want to give away the secret?
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, for some reason, I don't know, for no particular reason, but I kind of do the same thing with 26 or whatever. So
nice.
I whenever I start at roulette, so 26 and 29, you can match those two up for some reason. I don't have any reason for this. I don't have a tattoo on it or anything. But,
That's just me. It's just me.
You're a huge WW. Now, we're going way back. So it was WWF.
Yeah, it was WWF.
It was a huge story. I remember it being a huge, huge story when the WWF was getting sued and they had to change it from WWF to WWE.
Yeah.
Did you take it personally? Did it?
I mean, it really did suck, especially everybody that knew me back, like I said, in middle school, that knew how much of a big WWF fan I was.
Right.
And I got all them guys to be WWF fans, because nowadays it's hard. It seems like it's hard for people to be wrestling fans or whatever. So I kind of, the World Wildlife Foundation or whatever they are, I can. Here's the thing: I went to the Hall of Fame this past year, the WWE Hall of Fame, now World Wrestling Entertainment, and they had the Ultimate Warrior was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And
I'm chuckling because I had no idea there was a Hall of Fame.
And he still has a beef with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and I'll get to that story in a minute. But the Ultimate Warrior comes out to give his speech or whatever for being inducted, and he says something about, he starts to say WWF, and the WWE has gone out of their way to try to distance himself from the F for whatever reason.
Sure.
Even sometimes they like blurred out the old image and stuff and like old videos and things.
Sure.
So it was kind of
Really?
weird. Yeah, like I don't know that they had to go that far, but I don't know what kind of deal. So Ultimate Warrior's like, I still can't believe Vince McMahon got his ass kicked by those freaking wildlife people or whatever the hell.
You know, when you think of this is what surprised me about the whole thing with the whole WWF, WWE thing. There's some serious sick money in WWE. There's a lot of money that goes into the merchandising, the dolls, the ticket sales, the pay-per-views, and they couldn't win that lawsuit.
Right. That's what I thought was so weird.
I think the only defining point is that the WWF as the Wildlife Foundation had been around longer than the WWF.
And I think eventually,
other than that, they didn't have much things. They didn't have much ground to stand on.
And I think they finally just like, rather than continue to put up the fight, I think they just resigned themselves to say, okay, forget it. And they wanted to kind of change a little bit of their image because they, at one point back in the mid '90s, this is probably after you guys stopped watching, Vince McMahon came out and said, "We're tired of insulting your intelligence. We're not here to try to pretend like this is real, basically. This is entertainment like any other form of entertainment, and we try to do our best job to put on an entertainment show for you or whatever." So I think in a sense it kind of fell in line with that platform that he was.
That was actually...
Well, that mentality is probably a pretty good point. You don't want to ever talk down to people. But I have to admit, I watched Divas on... Is it E or is it Bravo?
That's a smart motherfucker that says, okay,
no, my wife...
People might be not... Maybe we need to bring up some viewers. How can we pull older people in who maybe weren't inducted when they were younger?
Sure.
Because, it's more than just a show. There's something that sucked you into it that you loved about it.
It really is geared. I watch it as happenstance because my wife is watching it because the women are fucking hot.
Oh, the women are amazing.
But she loves it because of the whole Kardashian-esque drama that's involved. And so I like it because of
I really wouldn't have imagined your lady is into WWE.
She's not.
Have you seen the Diva show?
TV show.
Huh?
Divas.
Have you seen that Diva show?
Oh,
That's what he's
no.
talking about.
I'm talking about
I have.
Divas.
Just very briefly.
I'm talking about Divas in particular.
Right.
These women, there's a lot of drama.
Who's the main wrestler?
It's
John Cena's
basically-
girlfriend.
John
Yeah.
Cena. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, the Bella twins or whatever.
It's so sad that I have that name.
John Cena.
Pop off the top
Boom.
of my head.
I should.
Well, see, but you're right though. That was like a good thing because that really, I think it has pulled in women. Like even my girlfriend, she hated wrestling and everything about it. And this is actually how I kind of got back into wrestling kind of big time because I had watched it for years and years, and then as you get older, you want to get laid, so you kind of have to,
gotta let it go.
yeah. So I had to let
I know
it go
a lot of
there.
Star Trek guys that
Or
are
at
the
least don't
same way.
bring it up on the first date.
Yeah,
That's
so
kind of
you have
key.
to kind of put it away. But I had collected all these action figures over the years or whatever that I had since I was a kid, and I had moved in with my girlfriend and her son, and I had this box of old wrestling figures, and he found the box of wrestling figures, and he's like, "Hey, how come you never showed me these guys before?" And I was like, "Because you don't watch wrestling, And he goes, "Well, I think these guys are awesome." So I started telling him who all these guys were. This is the Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, whatever. And then that was about the same time that Macho Man died or whatever. And and it was right as I was kind of telling him about wrestling. And then me and him saw this like Macho Man DVD at the store, and he's like, "Hey, you got to get this." And so we got it, and we went home and watched it, and then he kind of enjoyed it. So then we kind of made it our thing where me and him would hang out like on Monday nights and watch Monday Night Raw. So every Monday night, me and him would watch it and play with the action figures or whatever. And then so we kind of got into it, and then just by having it on so much, then my girlfriend kind of started watching it, and then the Diva show came on. So now she's almost like a bigger fan than he is and stuff. Or
I
whatever
saw
it
that
is.
on
So,
your
yeah.
Facebook about her not being into it. Now she is.
What a unique situation to be in to have a kid in your life without it being like this, like marriage and all the things that go along with it. But not that you aren't pretty close to being married.
But
Has it been a pretty revealing thing for you to have a kid in your life like that you can connect with?
And he's kind of crazy too. He's funny, but like, so to me and him are more like, I don't even know. We're kind of like friends, in a certain sense. So like he does a lot of crazy, and I try to be as authoritarian as I can, but I'm also a comedian, and I've never really been like authoritarian. So I let like a lot of things slide, and I find a lot of things humorous, and I can see a lot of myself and him and the things that he does. So, but I also have to try to be an adult at some points and try to calm him down. But then he'll try to punch me in the balls and stuff. And so I'll say, hey, don't knock me. He thinks it's funny. And so there's like a lot of things that are pretty crazy. But yeah, it's been pretty fun and having him and taking him places.
How long have you guys been dating, and how long have you been part of his life?
So now it's been about 4.5 years. So we'll probably be getting married here pretty soon, I would think, but I got to propose, but I'll keep that on the down low.
But Tim, that's a pretty big deal to have a kid in your life, and
I mean, to go to instant dad.
But I mean, being a buddy and being a friend is the initial part of things anyways. And so as a kid who was a step kid for a majority of my life, and having step kids in my life, or my son was a step kid for my daughter, Jesus Christ.
Are you all right?
No, I'm not okay. For Junior being a step kid, in not wanting to be a step kid and not looking forward to that role at all.
Right.
Finding somebody that you can get along with and just hang with. Like you said, I'm not very authoritarian. Let moms and dads take care of shit like that, and you can be a friend. That's a big thing.
To have a connection with a kid
totally.
At all.
Yeah, it's awesome. And his biological dad's not really in the picture. So my girlfriend, she likes that. She feels like I'm a good influence on him and stuff too. So she's always appreciative of that. And I feel like I am too. I try to show him the right way to go about things and stuff like that. I don't, I'm not used to being a parent, and also it's kind of hard when you jump in part way through their life or whatever too. So, but I think I came along at a good point. Like I met him when he was 7, and now he's
perfect.
Going to be 12. So
half his life, dude.
Yeah,
that's pretty impactful.
Yeah,
and right now is a pretty influential time. I have a 10-year-old. Matt has a 10-year-old. This is when shit starts going down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Puberty is nobody's fucking joke,
when my
for sure.
daughter comes back from her physical, and I'm like, so, how did the appointment go? Do you want to tell Dad? I'm like, oh, fuck. Does Dad really want to know what happened with my little princess today? Oh, God, yes. Okay, she's wearing a bra every now and then.
We're a year out from tampons.
It's the questions that you're not exactly welcoming.
Better fucking poise up.
And I imagine it's even harder with a girl, too, because at least that's what I think my mom said that, too. Girls are just so much harder because even, being on the phone when they talk to boyfriends or whatever, they get so emotionally involved. Like, for instance, I call him my kid, so he has this girl that was been trying to, because he doesn't have his own cell phone, so she texts him through my girlfriend's cell phone.
Good job, Mom.
And, yeah. And
wow, you really gotta be careful what you text. Like, don't forget, this is my mom's phone.
Well, and I think it's funny too because she gets annoyed by the girls, and I just think it's funny because this girl was texting her or trying to text her son and being like, is he home? And she's like, no, he's at so and so's house, and she's like, could I get the number over there? And then she just didn't respond. And then so the girl texts back, hello. And she's like, hello, no, you can't get the number. I'm not giving it out. And then
oh shit, they start early. Can I get the number to the person's house that he is at?
It's a freaking cat. That's awesome to have a freaking cat fight between the mom
and this 11-year-old girl.
Yeah, hey, if you would have had a cell phone when you were 11, this would be you.
But see, junior high is not an odd age to have a cell phone. I mean, junior high is kind of the age when you do get a cell phone so your parents can communicate with you because it's like another level of education. Like you've bumped up one step. And so we're already prepping for middle school and having a cell phone. But
can I remind everybody when I was a child, way back before they invented paper, when I was done with wrestling practice or football practice, you might be able to remember this. You dial 0.
Oh, yeah.
Will you accept the phone call from Matt? Will you accept this phone call from Matt? No. That was, my dad would get the phone call. No, I will not accept it. He would hang up, and that was his cue to come pick me up.
Yep.
Done. I don't need no fucking cell phone.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You just dial 0. I want to make a collect call.
Because you lived in the fucking woods out there somewhere, didn't you?
I was a wild child.
No. Yeah, you're a Mowgli. You were Mowgli for sure.
I was raised by wolves.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, yeah, man. That was, you were inventive. You looked at what you had and you made do. we don't need cell phones nowadays. We don't really need them. But then again, when was the last time you actually saw a payphone?
Yeah, it's hard. They're hard to find unless. And that's what I always thought was ridiculous about that. Wasn't it Maroon 5 or somebody that came out? I'm at a payphone. It's like, who's using a payphone these days? What the hell are you talking about?
What the hell? Well, I was watching American Pickers, is one of my absolute favorite shows of all time on TV, and I saw a rerun of them being in Europe, and Europe has pretty much got rid of all those red telephone boxes that you see in all the
those sons of bitches.
So. Yeah, and some guy he refurbishes them and gives them so they have it in your house, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the funny part was that he had one that he pulled the back off of. So he was repainting the entire thing. Pulled the phone out. There was like 300 call girl cards tucked back behind the payphone thing, and the guy who bought it said, "Can I get a few of those to put in the payphone when I actually get it refurbished and taken care of?" Because it adds to the story, right? And I was like, "Oh, okay." But they have different crowns for different people who were in power on the payphone. So King whatever and Queen Victoria, when she came out, she has a new crown on the payphone kind of thing, and so they're almost all gone because we all have cell phones. So there's absolutely no need for a payphone, even in the UK at this point. So,
all right, I have no segue, but I'm just going to bust into this question. How in the hell did you meet Mick Foley? I mean, you're a huge wrestling fan. It would be. I'm trying to think of what it would be like for me. There's certain things that I love. I love science fiction. Mm-hmm. There's certain shows that I grew up with just absolutely loving, like MASH. I just loved MASH growing up. But you loved WWF, and then you become really good friends with Mick Foley, which is a WWE wrestler. Did he start out WWF, or did he come in after that?
He started out. He had a couple of small matches, and then back in the 80s. The WWF brought him in to be like one of those jobber guys that just gets beat up by like the Ultimate Warrior or whatever. Okay, right. They brought him in, and he was just known as Jack Foley, and he got beat up, for a couple matches and stuff like that. And then he went on to like some smaller wrestling organizations, and then kind of worked his way up, and was kind of like this crazy character that would jump off the ring and drop an elbow onto the cement floor onto a guy, and that kind of became like his signature move. And then eventually he worked his way into
Who was the guy with the 2x4? Can you imagine the balls? Who was the guy with the 2x4?
That's Jim Duggan.
I always compare the two of them to... That's horrible. Don't do that.
With the tongue and
don't do that anymore.
That's 2x4.
Such a bad look.
Dude, we were talking about that the other day. I was at work, and I was like, all right, name all the WWF wrestlers that you can think of. And they're like, okay, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Captain Lou Albano. He wasn't a wrestler. Maybe he was when he was younger, but he was fun. A manager.
I loved
Cyndi Lauper was involved in that group.
He was part of her... That's how our production company.
That's how
I
think it all started. Is that she did a video and he played her father in like Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I think.
Yeah,
you got it.
And so that was right before the first WrestleMania. So WWE was trying to like get people to bring attention to them. So they brought in Cyndi Lauper because she was like one of the biggest pop stars back then. They brought her in to like be a manager and to kind of like come along. And so she got into like a feud with Roddy Piper and Piper.
And she was bright and she was bright and flashy, and so was he. I didn't know that was
Leap and Lenny Pavo.
But I do
you remember Leap and Lenny Pavo?
He's actually Macho Man's brother.
Yeah, and when he would get up and do his little, he would say a poem at the beginning of every match,
and then he'd chuck the frisbee into the audience.
And I would think, you might be the queerest dude I've ever seen.
He was so
ass kicked.
He was so.
I had no idea that Cyndi Lauper was part of the beginning of all that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Brutus
that.
the Barber Beefcake cutting the hair, and you had the British Bulldogs, and you had the Heart Foundation.
Oh, the Heart Foundation.
There's certain groups that are just iconic.
Yeah,
and like I said, doing research on you and the things that you're into, and looking at WWE videos on YouTube. It wasn't Jimmy Hart. Who was it? He was
Bobby
part of the
Heenan?
Heart.
Bret Hart.
Bret Hart. Him still making an appearance.
Yeah, he made an appearance the other night on Raw.
I thought, holy shit, do you ever get out of it? I mean, I originally I brought this up because you're a huge fan from being a small child. You're a huge fan of the whole wrestling phenomenon. And then you become good friends with Mick Foley, who is a wrestler. How did that
Well, it was
happen?
sort of surreal to me because well, I'll tell you initially how it started, and then I'll tell you how it kind of came surreal to me. But I saw, because Mick Foley got into comedy. Basically, he was doing he's a #1 New York Times bestselling author. He wrote his own books, and he basically wrote them himself. He just had somebody
And he
clean them up.
It was an autobiography, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that. Okay.
And he's a pretty good public speaker. He was kind of a funny guy in wrestling, even to a certain extent or whatever. So he kind of started in comedy and a little bit doing some things here and there, and it kind of took him a few years to kind of get going a little bit. But basically, his show is it's not like him going, so what do you think of George Bush? He basically tells stories about his time in wrestling, but like in a funny way and kind of some behind the scenes thing. So even if you're not a wrestling fan, it's still interesting just to kind of hear like all the things that this guy's done or been through or whatever.
For sure.
And so he started like touring, some smaller comedy clubs and things like that. And Jeff from Penguins was going to be bringing him into Penguins a few years back. And I saw that, and I was like, "Hey, if you're bringing him in, I want to open for him." I was a big wrestling fan, so he ended up hooking me up with him. And then, so I hung out with Mick that week, driving him around to some shows or whatever we did when we were up in Dubuque. And then I actually took him to my parents' house.
Were you a little starstruck when you saw him?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm thinking this is the craziest thing. Me and my brother used to have like wrestling matches in my bedroom or whatever growing up, and holding the belt. And now I actually have like a three-time WWF champion in my car. I just never thought I'd be driving around the WWF champion in my car. Like, that's just the craziest thing.
That's awesome.
Still to think about. And so I had him over to my parents' house, and me and my dad used to take me to wrestling events back in the 80s or whatever when I was a kid.
Sure.
But he hadn't really followed it since then or whatever, and he wasn't really a big fan. He was just kind of doing it for me. And so we had Mick Foley over the house, and first my mom comes up and she's like, "Hey, you want to wrestle?" And I'm like, "Mom, what the hell?" And my dad didn't really know who Mick Foley was or whatever. And so my dad's like talking about the time that me and him went to wrestling. He's like, "Oh yeah, I used to take him to the wrestling, and one time they filmed it actually, and we must have been on the wrong side of the camera because you could tell it was fake, and the guys weren't punching each other. You could kind of see it, and they weren't really punching. It was so fake, and this and fake." And I'm like, "Dad, will you shut the hell up? If anybody's not fake, it's Mick Foley." And because Mick Foley, like if anybody knows anything about him, brutal matches.
God, he takes a lot of damage.
I mean, The Rock hit him over the head with a steel chair 18 times one time in a match, and then after the match, they have this behind the scenes footage where his head is completely split open, and they have to sew it back together and everything.
I saw the YouTube video of him being in the warehouse of the WWE and looking at all the different props and all the different artifacts, he calls them. And he shows he has the chair, and he's like, "All that stuff that you see on the chair, that's my blood.
It's brown.
That's how it dries.
It's brown now.
That's how it dries."
Well, and watching him walk around, I was like, again, that's what I thought was abuse. I was like, "Oh, this guy has been through the ringer," because he kind of like he talked about. I thought I agree with what you're saying, that the way he came across is very funny and very down to earth, and but then talking and seeing him walk, I'm like, but he's been through the ringer.
Well, and that's the thing. I think he's only like 47 or 48, something like that. But he does have such a hard time walking now. He can't even. He had we were going over one curb, and it was kind of hard for him to. He was like, his knees are pretty bad and stuff. It's hard for him to go up and down stairs. And I mean, he really put his body out there for basically the fans' entertainment.
Sure.
I mean, and I watched his older footage, which you think he was still like that then. I'm like, how is this guy, still even walking? I mean, this guy's been, but he came over to so I mentioned he came over to my parents' house, and then my dad was saying all that stuff, and so the next day my dad didn't know who Mick Foley was. I brought my dad over the video to show him of him getting chucked off the cell and through the cell, and barbed wire bats and tacks in his back and everything. And then my dad's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." He's like, I wish you would have showed me this before he came over. He goes, I didn't offend the guy, did I? Because, my dad's saying fakey fake. And I go, "Well, I don't know, but I wouldn't really worry about it because Mom's got to wrestle him first." So.
Are you like a farm kid? Or are you a city kid? Or
yeah, I mean, we grew up here in the city, so
in Cedar Rapids.
We never. I think once we might have had a goose or something like that in our backyard. And then we had to get rid of it because it chased one of my sisters in the street or whatever. So
Embittered, and that was it. All right. Well, when it comes to comedy and Mick Foley and things like that, so Jeff hooked you up at Penguins. Was that kind of like? I mean, so when we talk about things like you opening for bigger names, you know. Did it all start from you being in Seattle and doing all those small gigs and meeting people, or how do those kind of things cultivate into you opening for like Bob Saget and things like that?
I think initially what the thing was is so eventually those managers down at Penguins would have me come in, you know, and host. I end up hosting the shows, you know, for on the weekends every once in a while, and kind of getting my feet wet and learning how to do comedy and things like that. And then Jeff would come back from Atlanta, and he would see me perform, and then I think I would always have like my worst set whenever he would come back, and so he would think, "Oh, this guy's terrible. You know, why we don't ever have him again or whatever." But then the manager would like kept having me or whatever for whatever reason, and then I eventually, like I said, I moved out west and kind of got my, you know, comedy chops going and learned how to do things, and then came back to Iowa, and then I think they did a story about me in the paper, and I had mentioned Penguins kind of gave me a start, and Jeff's like, hey, well, why don't you know, I'll book you for a weekend here or whatever. And then so from then on, you know, he always kind of started using me or whatever. So it just kind of.
I have this question for comedians, and I've only met a couple of you in real life. A couple of you guys in real life. But it seems like people who are good comedians are not the people who have a shtick or a character or anything like that. It's people who can take normal real life and turn it into something that's funny.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what you want. Like, I mean, okay, I don't have anything against any other particular kinds of comedy. Like if somebody plays a guitar or if somebody does magic or whatever their thing is that they do. And there's some weird comedians out there that have like a weird personality or whatever the hell. Right. But sometimes that stuff is interesting to watch on one show or two. But after a while, you don't really want to. It's hard to have a following for somebody like that in a way. And what was the question again? I know I was going somewhere with this, but anyways, so I think the thing is people like to see something that they can relate to. That's kind of what you're watching a comedian for. Like if even when I watch comedians, I'll see a comedian that will tell a particular joke and I'll be like, oh, that's awesome. I wish I would have, I knew there was something there. I kind of had that same thought, but I wasn't. Yeah. So and I won't be upset that I necessarily didn't come up with a joke. I'm just happy that somebody did so I could hear it myself, you know, like, yes, this is what I wanted to hear. So I think a lot of people are looking for that in a comedian, something that you can relate to, things that everybody goes through.
And I think, you know, I keep going back because as much as I like Joe Rogan and his podcast, when I keep going back to his comedy, I'm like, well, I love his podcast. How come I don't like his comedy? What's the big difference? And he's just a storyteller when it comes to his comedy pretty much. But I wonder if it's the ability to not relate next to him. Not necessarily it's not anything bad or good, but I can't really relate to it. So he tells me these stories that are kind of funny once in a while, and I enjoy them, and I enjoy his podcast. But I would maybe I connect with a Midwest kid, and that's why it seems more, you know,
I think
real
that sometimes you'll see like a novelty, I'll say, kind of comedian where they have like they kind of talk in a weird voice, and you think this guy is so strange. What the hell is going? And you're interested in seeing them, but then. Then when you see them like in a regular setting and then they're sort of out of that character to a certain degree, then you're like, well, why was that guy even doing that on stage like that? Anyways, if that's not really who you are, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, when I think of like Bobcat Goldthwait or there's I can't think of his name, so I'm going to try to do an impersonation. I apologize.
Oh God.
When someone talks like this.
Gilbert
Godfrey.
Yeah.
So I did it pretty well, right? You guys knew exactly.
No, it scared us to the point of we had only one flashback we could do.
It might not have been a good one, but you knew who the fuck I was
Beverly
talking
Hills
about.
Cop. That's what I remember.
Yeah, Gilbert Godfrey. So you have people like that put on that persona. And we talked about this a couple podcasts ago with Jeff. It's like, I think it was Jeff. Captain Kangaroo. You have certain people that you only see them in this role because they've played a certain character for years and years and years. Don't you think Captain Kangaroo got done with his show, walked off set, and was like, can I have a fucking cigarette? Can anybody give me a goddamn cigarette?
Right. Yeah.
You know, can you really picture Captain Kangaroo just banging his old lady?
Because that's the disconnect though, is we forget people are people. You know what I mean? We easily label them as being this or that.
But that's the shortcoming of having a character.
Well, and even like
as a comedian, instead of just going off of
like a Kramer or whatever, it's hard to see that guy in any other role. You can't picture him out of that because he's such a character,
right?
Yeah.
That you do your job so well, but you now. I guess if Seinfeld's over, it's hard for him to do any other sort of.
Well, do you remember him on? Is it Friday?
Oh yeah,
night?
yeah, he was good on
with the soldiers.
He did this thing where he brought out a tree one time, like he was doing a stand-up routine. And he brought out it was so wacky. He brought out like a fake plastic tree or whatever that had like a little fake bird in it or whatever. And then he would like look at the tree and he would say, "Shut up, bird," or something. And then he would, "Shut up, bird, I'm serious." And then he would take a broom and start whacking the hell out of the tree. It was like, what is this guy? What the hell is this? But it was stuff like that made you like want to watch. Like, what is this guy about?
Well,
but what's he gonna do next?
I'm thinking something totally different than what Tim is. There was a comedy show on Friday nights that was trying to break in on the whole Saturday Night Live gig, and that's where not Mike Myers. Who's Kramer? Why am I blanking?
Yeah, what's
on
his name? Whatever. See, that's the thing.
Well, Kramer.
That's the hard part.
But it was called like Fridays or something like that.
Fridays, something like that. And he played this little boy who had like army characters in the dirt, and it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And so I remember when Seinfeld came out, I was like, "Oh shit, that's the guy from that Friday night show." And my dad remembered that show too, because I want to say it was a Midwest kind of.
And he was
show.
in UHF. Do you remember that? Movie with Weird Al, UHF. I can't remember everything.
Hey, Kramer, the guy who played Kramer anyway, was also in one of my favorite movies, which is Todd, So I Married an Axe Murderer. Right?
I didn't mention the wife. Yeah,
I'm sorry. Did they mention the wife? Did they mention the wife?
No, they didn't mention the wife.
Have you ever seen that movie before?
No, I actually have not seen that movie.
God,
I've seen parts of it.
Tim, you got to sit down and you have to watch it with your lady because you'll piss your pants.
It's iconic. So... Mike Myers is a young Mike Myers, and it's absolutely fantastic. Maybe
I've seen parts of it every once in a while. I would stop, I think, when I'm flipping through channels if it was on and watch a little bit.
No, you have to sit down. You have to watch it. Because Mike Myers, his dad in real life is a really big Scottish guy.
Oh, yeah.
And so he plays his father in the movie.
He plays a couple roles.
And he plays he has a really thick Scottish accent. He plays himself.
Head, pants, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really awesome stuff. And he talked about it on, I want to say 60 Minutes or something. He did a documentary recently. And he's talking about making Wayne's World.
Yeah.
When he got a hold of Alice Cooper's manager. The guy, he goes, "I want to have this one sung by Alice Cooper," and the manager goes, "Nope, I think you want to use this song instead." And Mike Myers like, "No, I want to use this song. I know what I want." He's like, "Well, from what I've been told, you're 2 weeks out from production, and so you can either use this song or you're not having any song at all." And so Mike Myers was against the wall and said, "Okay, I'll use whatever song you want to have Alice Cooper in it." Well, that manager, they became very, very good friends. And he wasn't just Alice Cooper's manager, he was a bunch of other people's managers too. And so Mike Myers decided to do a whole entire documentary on this one guy that he met during Wayne's World. But he goes back and talks about all those other movies and being involved in, like, So I Married an Axe Murderer. He loves the fact that people love it so much because there's so many things in it that he just did not think it was going to work. He was off Saturday Night Live doing his own thing.
Dude, to me, it's like Goonies. It's like movies like Goonies or Breakfast Club, where you're just like, you say that line and everybody remembers it. You mention the truffle shuffle and boom, you're taken back to that moment in time when you're a kid and you're watching this movie and you're like, this is the greatest fucking thing ever.
When you mention Alice Cooper, I think of him accompanying Jake the Snake Roberts to the ring at WrestleMania 3.
Oh,
in Detroit, Michigan. So they took on the Honky Tonk Man.
Detroit.
The Honky Tonk Man. Oh, great segue, because you brought us right back to WWE. What in the... I can understand...
Okay, we're going to stop for just a second.
What?
I'm going to show you this. What
are you doing?
Here, watch.
Can you just prep everything?
Nope.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell is this?
Just watch.
Okay, so for everybody... Yeah.
No, you can edit it all out. I don't care.
Oh my God. We're watching the guy. Oh Jesus.
Okay, we can stop it. It's only a minute and 54 seconds, but it's already bothering me a little bit.
Here's the point of the whole.
I remember that.
Fridays. It was called Fridays.
Here's
it was
the point.
the show he was on.
I have to go through editing, and I got to find that spot. And I got everybody that's listening to this on an MP3 is like, "What the fuck just happened?" For a minute. For a minute,
Or you can just stop right here and say, "Edit." So Tim,
You were saying about
I was talking about WWE or WWF. Here's something that has, if you've seen the movie The Wrestler, you'll know that, holy shit.
Have you seen it?
Yep.
They put on this performance. It's entertainment. And I love that it was Vince McMahon?
Yeah, the owner.
Yeah, the owner.
Yeah, Vince McMahon.
Had come out and said, this is about entertainment. We're not trying to fool you. So I think that's great. And then when the movie The Wrestler came out, you really got to see kind of a behind the scenes. Yeah, you think everything's fake, but people are really, really getting hurt. Mm-hmm. Really getting hurt behind it. And, I watching those videos of Mick Foley, I'm like, wow, he's having a hard time just walking. Like he has a distinctively different walk now.
Yeah.
Than he did when I would find really early videos of him. And it makes me wonder, why would The Rock, I can see somebody getting into the WWE like The Miz.
Yeah.
I remember The Miz. I remember him from The Real World MTV and him talking about wanting to be a WWE wrestler, and he had this whole character, The Miz. I remember that. I remember watching it live when that was happening. And now he's got that role. He plays that part. He has that job. I can see somebody getting into the WWE to create a career and to earn a lot of money and hopefully maybe go on to greener pastures. The Rock did that.
Well, here's the thing is you got to kind of give it up for The Rock to a certain degree. John Cena made this comment where he was saying, The Rock talks about, loving wrestling, but if he really did, then he would be here wrestling or whatever. And so he kind of called him out. And The Rock's dad actually was a wrestler back in the 80s.
No shit.
Yeah.
Professional wrestler.
Right.
Professional wrestler Rocky Johnson was his name. And I think even The Rock's grandfather was even something like that, but I know The Rock's dad was, and so The Rock kind of grew up in the 80s following his dad around to these wrestling things, and Vince McMahon even knew The Rock when he was a kid, so The Rock's always had this love for wrestling. So even though he's this big Hollywood star and making millions in these movies, a couple years ago he came back to WWE basically just to show his appreciation for wrestling and that he loves it, and this is where he got to start. So he was almost back for like roughly a full year, but he was still doing his Hollywood stuff. He wrestled John Cena at one WrestleMania, had some feuds going. Then he came and wrestled John Cena at the next WrestleMania, but even previous to that, he was wrestling some matches against CM Punk and stuff. So he like for 2 years there, he was really back, and he came back at this year's WrestleMania and made an appearance or whatever too. So, and I think Rock will actually be back at next year's WrestleMania wrestling like Brock Lesnar, is what I'm thinking is going to happen at Levi Stadium, where the 49ers, that's where WrestleMania is next year.
Fucking
so.
49ers Stadium, Levi. Can you be quiet for a second?
Yeah, go ahead. Levi Stadium, go ahead.
For the 49ers. Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
You're rude.
You're rude.
All right.
He said Levi Stadium 49ers before you interrupted him, so
I apologize.
There's important things.
I was looking at Tim. I didn't see your social physical cue. Like you were going to say something. I wasn't paying attention to you. I was looking at Tim.
I don't give a shit.
I apologize. You're important too. You're a pretty flower.
Shut the fuck up and do whatever we can talk about what you're talking about.
But yeah, it is kind of a risky thing because actually I think The Rock, they were talking about possibly having him at this past year's WrestleMania wrestling again, but when he wrestled John Cena last year at WrestleMania 29, he tore his like pectoral muscle during the match.
Really?
And he had to get surgery and stuff on it. So
it
my
is
first thought is liability. That's my first thought. Is you're now a multi-million-dollar. If you have a contract with a studio
to do a movie,
you can't just fuck around.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's kind of a big deal.
I mean, it is a rehearsed thing. It is for entertainment.
That guy
but there's
tore
a
his
lot
pectoral muscle. I think of his pecs in my head. I'm just like, so what was he doing that he tore one of his pecs? Oh my god!
I remember seeing photos of him on the internet, and he looked ginormous. I mean, there was a huge difference between when he was doing all of his movies, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, WWE, let me get back into that." Whoosh!
He
exploded.
He did Hercules. It hasn't come out yet, and he put on 20 pounds of muscle for that movie alone. And he is, you're right, he's already a huge guy.
Enormous.
You add 20 pounds of muscle on top of already what he is. It's kind of mind-boggling. What was that movie that he did with Mark Wahlberg where they own they have a gym where they're
Pain and Gain?
Yeah.
No pain, no gain.
No, I think it's just Pain and Gain.
Sorry.
Pain and Gain.
Pain and Gain. Fantastic movie. I even talked to your wife about it because she had it on pause when I walked in the door one day for my kids' benefit, which I really appreciate. And I said, "Have you watched this yet? Are you almost done?" She was like, "Yeah, it's really good." I was like, "I told you it was." You think it's going to be a joke because it's The Rock and Mark Wahlberg and pumping iron and all this other bullshit.
And it's based on a true story.
But they do a really great job. And he is fucking huge in that movie.
Well, and that's the thing with The Rock is when he initially left WWE to start doing movies, The Tooth Fairy or whatever.
Right, yeah.
You know, you kind of thought he was going to be kind of like this joke actor like Hulk Hogan when he did Mr. Nanny and Suburban Commando and some of these kind of silly movies. But then now The Rock has gone on to where he is sort of legitimized himself in Hollywood, where he's making decent movies that people want to see and not
it's always going to be hard for him, I think, always, because of him being a big knucklehead, so to speak.
Is it kind of like being a porn star and then becoming a legitimate actor?
Because he's so...
you're always known for sucking cock?
But he's known for his body. He's such a big guy. You know what I mean? That's the hard part. You're a big dude, period.
Yeah.
So The Tooth Fairy, it's funny, but I thought that he did a good job acting in Pain and Gain. I thought he was hilarious in that movie. I thought he did a wonderful job. But how are you going to get out of the mold of the character you play when you're that big all the time?
If you look at it right now, he kind of is the Arnold Schwarzenegger of this
there you go.
generation or whatever, so to speak, or whatever.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Who is the biggest action star that you can think of right now? There really isn't. I mean...
You have a lot of smaller guys. You have a ton of smaller guys.
Bruce Willis is probably still up there when it comes to action.
Bruce Willis is going on the way out. Anybody who's in the movie, what is it?
The Expendables.
The Expendables.
Fucking 3.
Anybody who's in the movie Expendables.
When I saw Ronda Rousey was in that, I was so disappointed.
Well, and there's
Ronda Rousey's in it?
Expendables 3. Yeah.
There's a movie coming out, The Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batista is in that. Batista's a current wrestler, or he came back recently. Into WWE.
What's he play?
He plays the big muscle-headed bald guy or whatever.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So he had to take some time off from WWE because he recently came back, and then he had to take some time off this summer to go to the promotions, and I'm sure he'll be back here in the fall.
What was it called? The what?
The Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that's one of those movies that's tied in with Iron Man and Thor and all that stuff.
All that crazy shit.
Yeah, you had to keep on track. You got to keep track of
I
that
don't
stuff.
want to keep on track.
Can you imagine the person who is responsible for all the storylines, trying to keep everything straight and trying to create drama that makes sense?
Bradley Cooper is the voice of the raccoon, by the way. I didn't know that. So what was his name again? You just said?
Oh, Batista.
He's a big motherfucker.
Dave Batista.
God damn.
Oh, yeah. All right. I know what he looks like. Wow, he's a big fucker. Holy Moses.
Yeah, so that... go on.
No, go ahead.
Drax the Destroyer. That's Dave Batista.
That's my sort of my next goal, too, is as I mentioned, I was going to Iowa. I'm studying creative writing there. And so my next goal is to try to get a job with WWE to become a writer for their shows, to write the feuds and things like that, and the things that the guys do. That's always been my dream. Mick Foley said he'd put in a word for me if I ever applied.
I have a great story for
you. Never know what's going to happen. 5 years from now, you could be doing that.
Yeah.
10 years from now,
Totally.
All of a sudden you look back and you're like, "Holy fuck!" I remember being on a podcast going, "I would love to be doing what I'm doing." Right, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Right
the best part is that Doug
T.
Edward and I were talking at his studio at the Cherry Building, and I said, have you seen the headshot that did for Tim? I was like, no, I didn't see him, and so he showed it to me, and I was like, so he's really into WWE, and he goes, yeah, and I'm like, oh, it seems kind of silly. He goes, don't say that in the interview. And I'm like, and he was so serious, and I'm like, really? I can't just say like, come on, what the fuck is up? And he's like, seriously, don't mess around with that stuff. I'm like, oh my, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
Well, no, and I'm totally like, like if there's like you were saying, Star Trek nerd, maybe they don't get it, but I get, the nerdiness of it, and I certainly
it's not
don't
a joke. I mean, you watch the Mick Foley stuff, and that's not a joke. I mean, it could be theatrical, and it could be things written for things, but there is some physicality that's involved that can cause you some serious issues. So I appreciate that part.
I mean, if you don't look, and I hadn't for a long time, I hadn't looked at WWE stuff. If you don't look at it for a long time, you can think of it in a way of, oh, Jesus, it's just a song and a dance. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And I try to, in the back of my mind, keep the movie The Wrestler in my head. Like, yeah, but you're still physically doing stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's really hard. And then you watch the Mick Foley shit where he's falling 20 feet, slam dunks. I mean, it's a Nest T plunge, wham, on his back.
And here's what Mick Foley has a good point. He said, because when he got chucked through that cage or whatever and slammed onto the mat and completely knocked unconscious. And then what happened is he was wrestling The Undertaker. So then Terry Funk, this old wrestler, comes into they basically said, while Mick Foley was unconscious, Vince McMahon, buy him some time. Just do something to buy him some time till he wake. And so Mick Foley said, for the most ardent UFC fans or whatever you could say to them, when one of your participants is knocked unconscious, do you continue on with the match? Because in my sport, they do. So it was like in wrestling, they just buy you some time till your guy comes around or whatever. So,
I had to say, along with the things that we've seen with Mick Foley and things like that, after watching The Wrestler, it gave me a much greater appreciation of the people who really do love the sport for what it is, and the people who are on the not the WWE, but the 2 or 3 steps down from that, but they like it so much that they're doing the circuits. Then when the scene with the guy who's doing the staples and the forehead, and they sit down, they sit together, and they plan it out beforehand. Hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Are you okay with this? When this happens, and I was like going, oh my! It's orchestrated, but in a positive way. So they're trying to make the least amount of damage happen possible.
I watched a lot of Mick Foley's videos on YouTube, and one of the videos that just made me want almost throw up. It was almost like when somebody when you see in the movie somebody get kicked in the balls, you're at home and you're like, oh, you just kind of physically jerk. Mick Foley is wrestling a dude, and I don't know his name, and I apologize, I don't know his stage name. But he comes out to the ring, and he's got a garbage can, and he's got all this shit in the garbage can. And at one point in the match, he dumps out all of these tacks. All of these fucking real tacks. And he swings Mick Foley into the ropes, and Mick's supposed to come back, and he's going to take him down. But what Mick does is he knocks him out or throws him, and the guy who put the fucking tacks on the ground gets body slammed. He lands on his back in a pile of fucking tacks.
Yeah.
And he gets up and he's like, oh fuck, he's bleeding, and he's kind of staggering, he's pulling fucking tacks.
Are they all stuck in him?
They're all stuck in
his back,
yeah, and he's pulling tacks out of his hand. Holy,
Yeah, and then later in that match, then they went through a table that was on fire, and then even in the previous match, so that's what made it kind of interesting, because you thought Mick Foley's going to go into the tacks, but then he back body drops the guy into the tacks or whatever. But because in the match where you had the Undertaker, first Foley gets chucked off the cage to start the match. That's how they start the match. Chucked off it and lands on the announcer's booth, which is crazy to begin with. Then he put him in a stretcher, wheel him away. He gets off the stretcher, climbs back up to the thing, and then gets chucked through the cage, which it wasn't supposed to break like that, and then knocked unconscious. They buy him some time. He gets back up, starts wrestling again. Then he gets body slammed into some tacks. He gets hit with all these crazy things. So
wait, Mick And
so
that's the exact same.
The exact same match. Mick Foley actually gets a bag of tacks out, and he gets body slammed into the tacks or whatever and stuff. So that was the match before, a couple years previous.
Oh, so Mick had gotten slammed into
the tacks previously. And
Holy fuck!
Are they worried about? Are they worried about like concussions and things like that?
So nowadays they do a lot. They do a lot better with that because now they're trying to be. They kind of turn to like a PG era. Again in WWE to where they're trying to bring in kids and things like that, so they try not to have as much blood I don't think they allow chair shots to the head anymore. This is one of the things that they. So
wasn't there like for a while they're like total PWT, poor white trash, kind of like backwoods, kind of like they hire two bums to fight each other, and I see things on YouTube. There was
a time in history.
Thing.
Yeah, there was a time in our recent past where it was huge, and I think it was at the beginning of YouTube is when this all became kind of a big thing, where people were having these backyard brawls and doing WWE moves in their backyard.
Well, and the funny thing is,
the roof, and
this just shows you how like they have a video out of Mick Foley's career, like retrospective and his history and people talking about it, and they show like videos from him when he was a kid, and then he's like he jumps off the roof of his house like onto his friend as they're reenacting wrestling matches and stuff like this.
Oh,
so
no shit.
Even back then, I feel like that's like with me with comedy. I always wanted to be a comedian. I was always doing goofy things as far back as I can remember. Same with it. He wanted to be a wrestler. He was jumping off of buildings back then. It wasn't like he was, just having a normal wrestling match. He was always reenacting like the crazy wrestling matches that he would eventually come to do.
What the fuck is wrong?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to I can speak, so I don't know sign language. Can I have your charger? Can I see your charger for a second?
His phone is dying.
It'd be much better.
My laptop.
It'd be much better if you said, "Can I have your fucking charger?"
Well, he was in the middle of something. I was like, "Oh, let me see if I can point."
Charger. That's all I gotta say.
Hey,
charger.
Charger, motherfucker. Yeah. So watching that stuff, watching the wrestler, and then watching some of these behind the scenes types of things.
Well, and that's the thing is that so people always give wrestling. Oh, I can't watch it. It's fake. It's okay. Like I mentioned, they mentioned that. They don't say it's fake, but they're saying this is entertainment for you. We're trying to entertain you.
Yeah.
And that's what all these guys are doing that are putting their bodies on the line. Like I just seen this one match they had recently where the guy gets suplexed off of this huge ladder that's in the ring, like all the way on the top and falls off. And they're always doing these crazy flips and stuff. And so they're putting their bodies on the line basically to entertain the audience or to get a reaction out of the audience. And years later, these guys will have trouble walking, and basically, they're doing it for two reasons. One is maybe make themselves stand out a little bit,
sure,
but also to entertain people. Is the whole goal behind it. So, I think people should at least appreciate that about it.
Well, I brought it up earlier, and you said you were going to comment on the Macho Man and the Hulk.
Oh, the Ultimate Warrior.
I'm sorry, the Ultimate Warrior and the Hulk.
Well, because here's the thing: they had the Hall of Fame the night before WrestleMania this past year in April, and then Ultimate Warrior hadn't been in WWE for like 12 years. He had some feud with Vince McMahon where they didn't get along, and the WWE brought him back. Finally, after 12 years, it was like his first appearance in WWE, and he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The next night was WrestleMania. They brought the Ultimate Warrior out to wave to everybody, and that was the Ultimate Warrior. Then the next night I went to it too. It was Monday Night Raw, and then Ultimate Warrior came out and gave this speech. Every man breathes his last breath. Every man is the heart of the warrior, and blah blah blah. This. And then the next day, the Ultimate Warrior died. So it was like all three of those things, and then the very next day, the Ultimate Warrior died. And him and Hulk Hogan had a bit of a feud through the years, and then Hulk Hogan had wrote on Facebook or said, "I'm glad that me and the Warrior were able to make up during this past WrestleMania weekend." Him and the Warrior talked it out a little bit, gave each other a hug, and said they loved each other and stuff. So, and that all happened right before the Warrior died. So it was kind of crazy. And the same thing had happened with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man because they had a bit of a feud for years. And Hulk Hogan had mentioned he was at the doctor's office one time, and all of a sudden the door bust open to the doctor's office, and it was the Macho Man. He was like, "Holy crap!" And he's like, "Hey Hulk, what's going on?" And then he thought Macho Man was gonna beat him up or something, and then eventually they like made up, and they were discussing a plan to come over to have like a barbecue together or whatever. This has only been a week or two, and then the Macho Man died and was in that car accident and died or whatever. So it was like,
didn't the Hulk have a reality show with his wife and their kids?
Yeah. And then he got a divorce.
I remember that.
Yeah, he had a lot of real trouble came down for Hogan with that. His wife was left him, and they cheated on him, and then he ended up in some kind of somebody filmed Hulk Hogan with some he was like, basically Hulk Hogan was like at his buddy's house, and he was messing around with his buddy's woman, but I don't know if they were all swingers or what it was. And so there was like a camera in the corner, and it recorded Hulk Hogan in like some certain sex tape. And then Hulk Hogan's son got into an accident, and the guy that was riding with him, because they were street racing, got like paralyzed. So all these like horrible things had come down for Hulk Hogan. And then eventually Hogan had to like, basically, I watched this biography show they had about him. He like regrouped with his life and had to try to find what was really important, and kind of went back to God and was going to this church, and then eventually got his life back on track. And now this past year they brought him back to WWE for the first time in a long time, and he was the host of WrestleMania. So
what did Kevin Hart say?
Bret Hart?
Kevin Hart, the comedian.
Oh, Kevin Hart. I'm sorry.
Kevin Hart. He said,
"Dude, you're switching gears on me.
Give the wheel to Jesus," or what did he say? Give it over to Jesus. What's his comment that he did in that one comedy show? When things went wrong, he was like, "Oh,
yeah."
I don't know. We watched Kevin Hart this morning because
Kevin Hart
comedy.
was a couple weeks ago was a special guest on Monday Night Raw.
Was he really?
So see, we're bringing all these.
Sweet. Well, and I love him. Well, what's funny is Junior, my son, is the one who really introduced me to him. He's like, "Have you ever seen Kevin Hart?" I was like, "I've heard of him. Seen him on little bit things on shows." He's like, "You'd really like his stand-up. You'd like it a lot." Because I'm a huge Chris Rock fan, stuff like that, normal stuff. And I was really surprised at how teeny bitty he was. and he makes fun of himself.
Yeah.
He said, "I can't go to prison. My ass is so small and tight that I'd be raped all the time."
Yeah, you know I'm going to get raped. You know it.
He made I'm little, and so I get scared really easy. I mean, he makes all those comments about his size, and I don't think you realize how tiny he is until you see him in real life. Even on a stage, he looks small probably, but not when you're standing next to him.
You know, watching that comedy this morning with you upstairs, I was reminded at some of the comments I had made about comedians and comedy in general and our population. There's so many people, and there's so many comedians, and we have YouTube, and there's so many ways for people to get out there and to express themselves in a certain way. We talked to Jeff about, and Doug about, isn't it a little bit inside of you wondering, am I stealing? I don't realize I'm stealing somebody else's material, but there's only so much material out there.
Well, and Joe Rogan's a crazy fanatic about that kind of shit.
But then I watched the Kevin Hart thing upstairs this morning, and I thought, I haven't heard any of this shit, and it is fucking hilarious. So clearly, we have not reached all the
It goes back to
material.
what I said to him before. Was I said are good comedians the ones who have a shtick, but they take their life and they turn it into something funny. So it doesn't be what you and I think it should be. It's what their life is and how they turn it into something funny. So a Midwest kid with a plethora of siblings, and that's funny. Or you're a teeny weeny black kid growing up wherever you grew up, and that's the idea of where the comedy starts. I would hope.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because if you like, how many comedians out there have 3 brothers and 8 sisters? There might be some. But
no, not.
if you so I can use those stories and different things that I've had from my life that, like if somebody else is doing that particular material, I got to think, okay, that person's just basically stole my joke, because what are the odds that, somebody's doing that exact same material about my mom riding, whatever. That's not even one of my jokes, but I'm just saying, if somebody were to do something, my mom leaning in and 12 kids in the back with a jug of lemonade, then it's got to be like, okay, that's pretty specific to me or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's jokes. Sometimes I'll think of a joke and then I'll be like, okay, that's kind of funny, but it just seems like too easy, and so I won't do them. And then I'll watch like other comedians that will do like a lot of like my throwaway jokes that I've never even said in public to anybody, that I'll just think they're too easy to do. And then they're getting good laughs. I'm like, dang, maybe all these like throwaway jokes, like, because I've been writing jokes since, like I said, since I was 12. So I've got tons of jokes, and if I ever probably went back and tried to work out some of these jokes or whatever a little better, I would have even more material than I have right now, but I just think some jokes are too easy that I throw them away. And I even had one joke where I was kind of upset because it was kind of funny, but then I thought it was like too easy. And then I seen George Carlin doing, I'm like, damn, if George Carlin is doing this, or whatever, then that joke probably was good, so sometimes I have to like try to convince myself that these jokes that I think are too simple or too easy might be ones that maybe I should bring in. But so I don't know. I try to have a little bit kind of more abstract material, and I appreciate when like comedy bookers or agents or other comedians will say, that's really original. I haven't heard anybody doing that type of thing or that kind of style or whatever. Sure. And I've been getting kind of a lot of those comments lately. So that's like the best compliment you can
I would
get, I guess.
I would assume if you're coming off of your angle on things, that the things that are disingenuine would come across super easy. Because, I mean, a joke is a joke. And I guess if you're talking about, I don't know, Monica Lewinsky, or I'm not talking about the Clintons, or you're talking about the George W. Bush. Those are all kind of generic things that people have talked a lot about. If you're coming off from your point of view, whether it's your family or it's...
But you know what? Think about when I think of comedians, I think of like, what are some of my absolute favorite actors? And some of my favorite actors are comedians. And when I think about comedians, I can only assume what I would have to go through to get up on stage, because the absolute balls it would take to get up on stage.
Clank and spark.
Oh, Jesus. Because I would bomb, but if I was a diehard comedian, I would get up the next night and I'd do my act, and if I bombed again, I would probably eat a bullet. But there's other people that are like, well, okay, well, that didn't work so hot, and maybe I'll try something else, and I'll change it up a little bit. But the balls that it takes for people to do that, it's absolutely amazing.
Tracy Morgan, is he out of the hospital yet?
I haven't heard an update.
I haven't heard anything either, but somebody told a story about him being at the Improv in New York City, and he was backstage, and the comedians were all lined up to go out. There's like 3 or 4 guys, and there was some guy sitting there going over his notes, and Tracy Morgan walks up and rips the 3x5 cards out of his hands and fucking tears them up and throws them away and goes, just fucking go out there and be funny. And this guy is mortified because he's been working for months, if not years, on this 30 minutes of time that he's put together that he thinks is funny, funny. And do you need to have that kind of process where you plan? I mean, they even talk about, Louis C.K. or Jerry Seinfeld. They work the small clubs and getting their 10 minutes at a time, these certain bits together so they can do a whole entire show or an hour or whatever. I mean,
listen, there's I feel if I went up and I didn't have any planned jokes or just wanted to get up there and say whatever hit my mind at that moment, it'd kind of be a little silly. I could get up on stage and mess with the crowd and ask them and then make jokes or whatever. Right. If I wanted to do a whole joke about that, I could do that. I don't usually do a whole lot of crowd work, but I know that I have the chops to do it. If I just wanted to make a whole show out of that, I could eventually go through everybody in the crowd or whatever and make a show of that if that's what I wanted to do. A guy like Tracy Morgan he's like kind of a goofy guy, like so he's gonna be kind of funny just in the way that he already comes across. Yeah. That if he says something that isn't even really that funny, it's gonna almost be funny to you just because of the way that he's saying it.
Or it's so crazy out there that it's just
this guy that he's ripping up the jokes for maybe isn't such a character. When he gets up on stage, he isn't gonna look as funny or talk as funny as Tracy Morgan, so he's not gonna be as appreciated as Tracy Morgan, so he's gonna need the jokes to back it up, so he's gonna have to go up there with some kind of material. So I don't think it's really fair to Tracy Morgan to say, just go up there with the jokes, because
for sure, if
every comedian you've ever seen went up on stage with the torn up piece of paper there wouldn't be very many good comedians out there.
And that was my thought, because if Jerry Seinfeld and some of the people are going up there with written out things and ideas of what they want to approach things on, I mean, and Louis C.K. is considered one of the most prolific comedians out there nowadays with the amount of things he writes about with his show or to stand up and things like that. You would want to have some kind of preparation as a professional.
Well, and there's there's certain shows that I'll do where I'll come up with an idea and I won't necessarily have an ending for the joke or a real idea of where I want the joke to go, but I'll know there's maybe something funny there. So sometimes I'll get up on stage and I'll start telling it, and then just in the sheer panic that I'm not going to get a laugh from what I'm saying, I'll think of something funny in that particular moment
To finish it.
where I couldn't do that if I was just necessarily sitting, in my bedroom writing the joke. I'll have the idea of what I want to say, and sometimes I'll think of a great line or whatever, but sometimes I won't, and it'll just be a stalled joke. So sometimes if I really think there's something there and I really want to get that joke out, I'll go up on stage and I'll just start telling it, and then the sheer panic that I'm worried about the crowd staring at me and it's not going to be funny, all of a sudden my brain will light up and I'll be able to have something funny that comes out of it, or something funny that comes out of it because the joke wasn't funny or whatever. So sometimes I like to do that. Sometimes that works out pretty good. But
is it easier with like a smaller crowd like Penguins than it is like a crowd somewhere in Seattle?
The bigger the crowd is always usually the better. People say, I get more nervous to a particular degree, a smaller crowd, because the bigger the crowd, the percentage that there's going to be people that are going to appreciate it is going to be higher than, if there's a smaller crowd.
And then laughter is kind of contagious. If your friends or your
Right.
neighbors
And if
are
people
laughing, then you're like,
yeah,
you're getting
exactly.
into it.
And then when you have a smaller crowd, people don't want to be, even if they find the joke funny, they don't want to necessarily laugh because they don't want to be like the only person laughing. They feel like the outsider. Then like, oh man, people are going to look like me, like I'm the idiot because I'm laughing at this. So they keep their laughter in when you have a smaller crowd. But sometimes I actually like doing the smaller crowds like that too, because it gives me a chance to like experiment, because I know that's the situation. So I know now I can be a little more aggressive or try some crazier things and see what the hell kind of works. So I know there's a lot of comedians that panic. Oh man, there's only 12 people here or 20 people, whatever it is,
Right.
So
Well, fuck it, it's 12 people.
Yeah, I'm like, well,
right?
good. Then this is 12 people that I got a chance to, work on or whatever and see what the hell I can come up with. So I don't really get
That's a great
too
perspective.
nervous about that.
So I heard there was a place called the Rodeo that you said was one of your favorite places to.
That was.
And did we mention we talked to Doug T?
Yeah. Me and Doug did that, but I got a feeling. I know Doug didn't appreciate that show, but here's the thing: when I was getting started in out west in Montana and Washington and Oregon, doing those I basically did shows like the Rodeo every damn night. And me and Doug did this particular show called the Rodeo. It was the place called the Rodeo in Clinton, Iowa, one night. But
Clinton.
So it wasn't, in a certain sense, it wasn't really anything new to me. It was just kind of I know it was going to be a sucky show, but we got there and
because Doug T was there.
Yeah. And they had basically like a dance floor set up, and then all the chairs were way in the back. So there's a stage and then a dance floor, and all the chairs were in the back. And I said, hey, how about we move some of the chairs closer to the stage so people can, you don't have this big empty floor in front. And then the guys that own the places looked and they said, well, I mean, if we did that, then how are people going to line dance in between the comedians? And I was like, what the hell? We're going to line dancing in between the comedians.
So you're telling me I'm going to say a joke and people are going to be line dancing. Are you playing music while I'm...
Yeah. And so Doug went up first, and he had to do a half an hour, and then I was headlining, so I had to do an hour, and I was watching Doug's set, and I was like, oh man, I've never been so envious of him in my life, because he only has to be up there
30
for
minutes.
30 minutes, and there wasn't very many people there to begin with, like 5 people or 10 people or whatever the hell.
And you still had to
And
contend with the line
after
dancing?
Doug got done doing his show, all right, everybody, let's get out here. We got a couple of line dancing songs to do, and then people line danced, and then they stopped the line dancing, and then they brought me up. So I was like, what in the hell? This is the stupidest damn thing you could ever...
That's
do it a show.
awesome. Where in Montana were you?
I mean,
I'm sorry.
That's probably
Dude,
one
you
of
jumped on
Can
me.
you just keep hawking and coughing?
I
Go ahead. You were going to
apologize.
say what?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been pretty much almost every city. It seems like it's weird, but that was one of the states that I probably performed in the most when I initially got started, because I did about every city in Montana, and this is true. I actually went through 3 cars that broke down in Montana, basically. And one time it was a hellish trip that I had there. Okay, I don't even know if we get into this one, but first of all, I stayed at this hotel where when you normally check into a hotel, they might have 1 or 2 beds. This room had 3 beds, but they were all like U-shaped, like this, and then they all had 3 separate comforters on it, like different colored comforters, green carpet, rusty bathroom, and then there was like a piece of toilet paper hanging from the wall, and I was like, is that just stuck to the wall or what is that? So I pulled the toilet paper down, and then there was like a hole there that the toilet paper was stuck in. So I looked through the hole, and it goes to like a painter's closet. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's basically like the painter,
people.
The maintenance guy's spy and thing. So the girl that I was with, I was like, hey, we're not taking any shower here tonight. We're just, we'll just,
You get bed A, I get bed C.
Yeah, exactly. So
my wife lived in Bozeman for a while.
Oh yeah, so I've been sheltered.
She loves Bozeman.
Yeah, Bozeman's pretty nice. This was in Great Falls, but then so I think I had to drive from like Great Falls to Billings. But go on.
Okay.
You were jumping in.
No, don't forget where you're at, because I just heard from a guy who works with me who's getting a job in Great Falls, and he's like, it's beautiful. I can't wait to go there. He's going to be a cop, but it sucks.
Well, I mean, I might be all right. I think the falls aren't so great anymore, is what I heard too. But I think they like quit falling or something like that, or something to that nature. Anyways, I don't know. I was driving in Montana. There's lots in between the towns. There's nothing basically.
There's nothing. It's the second biggest state in America, and there's nothing in between. Yeah,
and
you're good.
Anyways, my car ended up breaking down in the middle of nowhere in Montana. This is before I had a cell phone too, or whatever, and so
bag phone.
It was a couple weeks ago, and so my car broke down, and then. And I knew it was the end of the car because basically I think the rod shot through the engine. It was busted up, so I had to walk to where the closest piece of civilization I could find. There ended up being a golf course in the middle of nowhere. So I get to the golf course, I call the agent that booked me for the show, and I say, "Hey, look, I'm broken down in this town about 80 miles away from Billings or whatever." And he says, "All right, well," he gets a hold of the other comedian that had already arrived in Billings, and that guy, he was nice enough to come. Picked me up. His name's Kermit Apio, great guy. And he picked me up in Billings picked me up and drove me back to Billings. I had like $18 to my name. I think I was getting paid in a check or something. I had to wait till I got to a bank or whatever. So, maybe whatever. But anyways, let me get to the fast part of the story or whatever I'm trying to say here. I do my show. I have $18 to my name. I tell the story to the hotel. Look, I need to stay here for like another day while I try to figure out if I can rent a car or fly out of here. It was like $1 million to fly out of Billings. I don't know why it was like $1 million.
Because there's no fucking airports, dude. Right. There's nothing around there.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then I couldn't rent a car for whatever reason because I wasn't going to. So my only option was to just buy a new car, in this town. So. But I have to wait till like Monday when the car dealerships are open, and it's like Sunday, and they said, okay, you can stay, because I was already staying Saturday night to Sunday. They were going to give me a discounted rate to stay from Sunday night to Monday, but they said, you got to be out of this hotel by Monday. This is our biggest weekend of the year.
Sturgis or something?
No, it was similar to that. Yeah. It was, it was old man on motorcycles, rally, but not only that, the old men had to have a sidecar attached to their motorcycle that they carried their wives in. And so every old man that had a motorcycle and a sidecar showed up in Billings this particular weekend or whatever. And every hotel in town was completely full. You couldn't find a room. I don't care if it was the one with the toilet paper stuck in the wall or whatever. They were completely full. So, they said, you can stay, but you just got to get your ass out by Monday. You cannot, I don't care. We aren't giving you a discounted rate. I don't care how much you pay. You're not staying here. So I had to I was under pressure to get a car in Montana. I ended up getting a car. It was a long damn story, but that's part of the reason why I moved from Oregon to Los Angeles. That girl did not appreciate me anymore.
Now, Doug says that the pay was not very good for the line dancing in between the songs.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what the pay was. But
is that an issue, though? Is that an issue sometimes? Is people like, I want you to come in and draw in a crowd, but I'm not going to pay you. I mean, are they shady like that?
No, here's one that stuck with me in particular. I did this show. I think it was somewhere in Mississippi, and I was supposed to be there for 2 nights. It was at this huge club. And it was like also a dance club. Like after the comedy was over, then it turned into like a dance club. Okay. And they said, hey, get whatever you want on the menu. We're taking care of it. They had it was like a restaurant too or whatever. They said, get whatever you want on the menu. We'll take care of it. Take care of all your food this weekend. So, and I wasn't hungry, so I just didn't get anything, or maybe I knew better a little bit. But the opening act, he got like a couple plates full of food. He was eating down both nights. There wasn't a very big crowd on the Friday night, like 20 people maybe or whatever. Then it comes to the next night, there's still not a very big crowd. and they're not starting the show. They're supposed to start the show at like 8 o'clock or whatever, 7 o'clock or something. It gets to be like 9:30. They still haven't started, and they're like, we're just waiting for some more people to show up or whatever. And then finally they say, then the owner comes and he says, hey, I don't think we're going to do the show tonight, but would you guys mind taking a little less pay or whatever? Because I can't really afford this comedy. And we had already agreed to the pay. Basically, like, it isn't like I'm going there to do the door deal, if that was the case. But this was an agreed upon fee, you know? So I could have booked another show somewhere else and got paid. So you have to pay me regardless if you're doing a show or not. Because they always say, do you want to do the show? And then I always say, yeah, I'll do the show. If you don't want to, that's up to you. But I'm going to do the show. So, because I don't want to be the one back. No, I don't want to do the show. Because then they say, well, he didn't want to do the show, so then they won't pay me that. So I always say, yeah, I want to do the show. So this guy, he was like, well, come on, please just take $100 less than what I was going to give you. I just don't have the money. And please just take. And I'm like, no, dude, I need my money. I'm counting on it or whatever. I'm not going to. And then the opening act was like, well, I mean, I guess I did get a couple of plates of food or whatever. If you want to discount that from my. So like, okay, yeah. So they charged him like $50 or whatever for the food that he had bought or whatever. Now they charged him for it that they were trying to give him for free. Right. So then there's like a crowd lining up outside that eventually wants to get in to start the dancing or whatever that was supposed to start after the comedy. They're like lining up outside, and then eventually they're slowly letting people in. They say, okay, well, I don't think we're going to do the show, but we'll pay you in a little while. Now it gets to be like midnight or almost midnight. We still haven't got paid for the weekend. And I'm like, damn, just give me the money. Let me get the hell out of here or whatever. Right. So finally, I tell the guy, I say, look, I'm supposed to collect $100 more for the agent because the agent had set up the show that I'm supposed to mail him. So I wrote this thing up. I said, I don't agree for this money to come out of my money. You and the agent can figure this out. I'm taking this money, and then you deal with it with the agent. And I had the guy sign it and everything. He's like, all right, yeah, I'll do that. So then I got my money basically, and then I leave, and then I come back into the club because I forgot something in there. And then as I'm in there, here's the owner on stage with a cannon like thing. And he goes, all right, who wants to win $2,000? Here we go. Boom. And he shoots a cannon full of like money into the dance club, like of $2,000 worth. And I'm like, this bastard's trying to short me $100. And here he is shooting $2,000 worth into the goddamn crowd.
Well, even if he's bullshitting and saying it's not it's $2,000 and it's not, it's a cannon full of ones, it's still fucking shady.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that we've talked about my stepfather, who's a prick. He's offered to help us here and there, but he's like that. He's fucking sketchy because he's living or running his business paycheck to fucking paycheck or moment to moment like that. Like, oh, come on, give me a break. Save me $100, right? It's so fucking sketchy. You start talking about that kind of stuff, I'm just like,
wham, that throws you back into...
No, it doesn't throw me back. It just makes me realize that you have honest, down-to-earth people that you deal with who are they maybe... I mean, if somebody was really fucking stuck, they'd say, listen, I'm in a really bad spot right now. I thought I would have this many people to be here. I don't have this many people to be here. I thought we were going to have this kind of crowd. We don't. Would you be willing to do this instead of this? And address you in an honest kind of way about doing something going, oh my God, come on.
And then plus the place was full of people that had paid $15 to get into the damn play. You know what I mean?
You know what? That's a great segue with Tim. I know that I had talked to Jeff and we had agreed on you coming here for $2,000.
Yeah, I'll take $100.
That would be.
Todd was supposed to have the money. He was supposed to work the corner last night, but we just don't have it.
I guess I'll have to settle for a couple of beers.
Oh, all right.
It is Goose Island. So
I'm gonna go shoot off some money. I'm gonna go throw some cash at my kids.
Your kids.
Take the cash, kids. Go get some ice cream.
Dad, you hit me in the head with a quarter.
I had a couple other things I wanted to ask you.
Okay. Oh, and we got to bring up. I saw that you wanted. Well, I'm. All right. Fuck it. I'll just.
Here, I'll make notes of them. What
all right. Take notes. Take notes. You had asked where you could get some T-shirts made. Did you get that answer?
I mean, people gave me some places. I haven't explored them all yet. I still am in the process of trying to figure that out.
Because Todd has.
I got a great guy for you.
Great guy, and we're going to do a podcast for him.
Yeah, we are. His name, I'll have to edit this out because I can't off the top of my head. Sorry. His name is Tony. That's how I know him.
Yeah, Tony Burnett.
Tony Burnett. And he uses this kind of like really soft cotton.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
That I fucking love.
Yeah.
$1 shirt. It's more like a $20 shirt. but he does a lot of reflective bicycling and running kind of shirts. But he's opening a shop down in Newbo Market, and I wear his shirts, or I wear shirts like his, because they're so fucking comfortable.
Yeah.
And so I sent him. I told him that I sent him an email and said that I'm going to let Tim know about your shirts, and if you still have a need for t-shirts, we'll definitely.
Right. So we have his phone number for you, and you know what? And if you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube, it's 555-422-0330. That's Tony Burnett. So if you wanted to get a hold of him, call him and need some shirts made, you can do that. Or you can go to tonyburnett at gmail.com, and that's TONYBURNETT at gmail.com.
Perfect. Are you at a point right now where you're happy with where your things are at, your comedy wise? Are you in a good spot?
To a certain degree. I mean, there's certain times that I'd like to be busier, but then I also kind of certain reasons why I'm not. I take times off that's what's kind of nice. You can kind of take the time off that you need. So a lot of times I try to schedule my shows around Iowa football games. So even when I'm doing those 3 weeks that I'm gone in Virginia Beach and Canada, those are all during either off weeks or away games. So I'm able to
Iowa State's at home this year, though.
Yeah.
It's be a good one. Mm-hmm. I'll be down there for that one.
Now, when you go to a home game, are you going to be sitting closer to the field than Ashton Kutcher?
Okay, I don't know if you guys have done this kind of research yet or not.
He's on the field most of the time. Just FYI.
Ashton, because I saw a picture of your finger pointing at Ashton next to Gable. But you were sitting next to your.
It's fucking wrestling, dude.
Yeah, because
he's either up in the press box watching the game, or he's on the field watching the game.
Yeah, I met Ashton Kutcher years ago at the Iowa game. Also, I met him one other time too. I might get to that one, but that one that you're talking about was this past year. I went to the Iowa Penn State wrestling meet.
Sure,
at Carver Hawkeye Arena.
It's on TV.
And just to show you, Ashton Kutcher was sitting in the very front row of Carver Hawkeye Arena at the meet, sitting next to Dan Gable.
And Mila.
I was sitting in next to his woman. I was sitting in the very last row with my woman of Carver Hawkeye Arena next to my high school wrestling coach. And so just to show you how far separated celebrity-wise me and Ashton Kutcher are, it's 47 rows of Carver Hawkeye Arena.
I saw that and I loved it. I thought that was just
hilarious.
Hilarious.
But the thing is here's the thing, and maybe you hadn't heard this or not, but I kind of met Ashton Kutcher a long time ago at an Iowa game when I took this girl with me. She used to date Ashton Kutcher. She used to date Ashton Kutcher before she met me. They broke up. Then like 2 months later, she met me, and then we started dating. So bad luck for her. But the good news is that I found out my wiener is bigger than Ashton Kutcher. So
that's right.
I travel from town to town, and I tell everyone that because I want word to get back to Ashton Kutcher, so he puts me on punk. That's my plan, because what's he going to do? Deny it? No, Tim's lying about the wiener rumor. He ain't going to. I'll keep saying it. And then I want to piss him off so much enough that one day he says, okay, I'm pissed off, so I'll say, okay, if you think so, let's have a wiener contest. Then it'll be me and him. We'll hold up a ruler or a yardstick, more likely. And then... well, I'll have somebody take a picture of the process, so that way if somebody comes up to me at a comedy club or him at a movie studio and says, is it true about the wiener rumor? We can pull the picture and say, yeah, it is true. Here's the proof. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Whatever the and I figure, okay, what if the worst case scenario happened? The girl that we dated at the time lied, and Ashton Kutcher turned out to have a bigger wiener. I'll say that's fine. I got a picture of Ashton Kutcher's wiener, and I can sell to TMZ for $1 million.
There you go.
I win.
Well, maybe
it's a win-win for you.
Maybe Chris can come on this show, and he can prove us all wrong.
Yeah. Maybe this is where we could get down to business. We could stand there by the black curtain and we can hold it up, whatever we got to do.
We'll just put a ruler across, a yardstick across the
seriously, that would be hilarious. And Tim's over here with a black bar.
But here's the funny thing about it is years ago when I was in Los Angeles, I did this show and this guy was on the show with me. I had told that joke basically, and in which it's not jokes, just telling the story about it. But I mentioned that, and then this guy, he was on Ashton Kutcher's Punk show. He was one of the characters on the Punk show, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to tell him that tomorrow at the office or whatever. I'm gonna tell him that." And I was like, "Yeah." And then there's this girl that I kind of dated for a minute that lives next to Ashton Kutcher's parents, or whatever, and So I had made this DVD up that said "Bigger Than Ashton." It's me holding a ruler, and I look like a big muscular guy and everything. And it was like a drawing of me or whatever. And so I gave her the DVD, and she gave it to her parents, and they supposedly gave it to his. And then I ran into his brother or something somewhere, and then somebody that bowls with him, they gave him the DVD. And so I know it's at least got back to Ashton Kutcher. He's like, "Who's this?"
He's heard about it.
Yeah.
Well, Corey Bassett, who's kind of a friend of the show, who helped us with our lighting and some of our video setup and stuff like that. They're friends, and so we've always wondered, but
there
it gets back to him from Cedar Rapids, especially because he's pretty involved in Cedar Rapids and stuff.
That would be pretty.
But I gotta give it up to him. I mean, yeah, he's at least he still comes back to Iowa and he's supportive of the Hawkeyes.
Shit! I think he has a house here, so that's pretty awesome.
So I appreciate that about him.
It's neat for anybody to become famous or get to that point in their life where they're like, you know what is really relaxing. You know where it's like sanctuary, Iowa. Yeah, I'm gonna come back home.
Well, it really is. I mean, even living in
come on, this place is the quietest, most.
I don't know. After listening to Montana, that you can walk and there's nothing there but maybe a golf course.
No people. No people is different than people who you can get along with. And so for being from the Bay Area, where it's traffic and it's nice there, but it's just people. It's a population that's just hundreds of thousands of people, and you get that many people in one spot, and it's just busy.
And it's just frustrating. Like you even go into like a Subway or whatever and trying to order a sandwich, like half they don't particularly speak English, and like they don't understand what that. And like, good Lord, I'm just at a Subway, and you can't. I want extra cheese. Do you understand what I'm saying? So coming back here, things are like so simpler. You can explain what you want. So I just think there's like a lot of things that are so much simpler.
And Junior came back, and he was like, we went to the lunch one day. He's like, we should not be driving. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, noon in Cedar Rapids with all the old people going to eat is the worst time to drive in the city ever. And I'm like, you've been in the Bay Area. You've been in other places. You've been in San Antonio. You've been in Houston. Do you think this is the worst? He's like, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, when all the old people come out to go to lunch is the worst thing I've ever been part of. I'm like, why? He's like, nobody's cutting me off and nothing's bad. It's so fucking slow, you can't get anywhere. By then, lunch is over when you have to go do something else.
Dude, I've never heard anybody describe old people in Iowa as being worse
than traffic in San Francisco.
Yeah. Okay, Tim, I got to ask you. So are you... I asked you before the podcast, are you in any way... Do you like scary movies?
I mean, they're not necessarily my first go-to type of movie to watch.
Do you like going to like haunted corn mazes?
Those are kind of fun.
But okay, I got a film. I got a little thing here on YouTube that somebody sent me, and I thought, man, this is really maybe the scariest thing I've seen in a long time. It kind of unnerved me. The reason I bring this up is because tomorrow, Todd and I are driving to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Oh, I'll be up there in August.
And we are doing a podcast with a demonologist.
What does that entail? What is it?
Well, she goes to people's houses, and people will get a hold of her, and we'll get the full skinny tomorrow, but they get a hold of her and they say, this is what's happening. And she goes in, she kind of cleans the house, but from some of the videos that I've seen, she's got some really creepy fucking stories. So Todd knows what we're doing tomorrow. Right? He's jazzed for it. And it's a really crazy, it's a really weird way of how I found her and how we've gotten connected. But this video got sent to me, I don't know, on Facebook or Twitter or something. I saw it. And I go, hey, Todd, you have to watch this. A grown-ass fucking man. He's over 40 years old. He's watching it like this.
I don't like things like that.
All right, so I'm gonna let you watch it. And then you can, I want you to be 100% honest. On a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being, yeah, that was pretty fucking unnerving. And then I want you to think also, if you were to meet a demonologist,
what would you ask?
What would you ask her? What would you ask her?
There isn't going to be she isn't here today.
No,
that's kind of freaking me
out. It should freak you out.
All right, here's it. By the way, for everybody listening to this MP3, the YouTube video is called Lights Out. Lights out. And it's only like 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
It's fucking horrible.
I'll have the link on our podcast.
Oh.
Fucking hate that shit.
Oh. Don't turn off the lights.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much.
I gotta see where she's at.
If you scream, I'm going to scream too.
Yeah.
So don't scream, please.
Oh, no, yeah, you're ready for it. That's the worst decision ever, to hide under your covers. Don't ever do that. Oh, shit. The door's open.
I mean,
Tim looks a little unnerved.
You should be.
partly I wonder why the guy with the camera doesn't do anything.
This is terrible for YouTube, or for MP3,
What the
but
hell?
YouTube,
Her
maybe.
charger.
Now, you know this is European.
from that.
Oh, okay. That's what the charger that was. I'm more disturbed by that right now.
All right, get ready for it. She looks. Oh, shit. The light's back on. The door's closed. What? Did I imagine it? What? That's it. That's it. What do you think? What do you think?
It's fucking scary, dude.
Yeah, that was a creepy looking thing there.
I don't like that shit at all. I don't like it. He made me do it.
Yeah, I made him
You
watch it because I'm like,
made
I
me
said, dude, you
watch
gotta
it.
be desensitized.
But-
We're,
And this
Are you-
this is why I just don't like shit like that. Period. Have you
you're
seen
such
the
a
movie?
man child.
Shut the fuck up. Have you seen the movie The Fourth Kind?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one is.
I believe-
freaky. I won't watch it again if you refuse.
Thank
to
you
watch
very
Oh,
much.
oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, Tim, because I won't fucking watch it either. And he likes to give me shit because of it, because I really think it's very realistic. And so we're interviewing
Super creepy.
a demonologist / paranormal kind of lady.
investigator,
She runs
sure.
the Michigan Paranormal Research Association, and we're going to meet her in Traverse City tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
So he has all these things prepared for her that are scary. We have plenty of skeptical friends as well who are like, oh, ask her about this or ask her about that. But we're excited to ask her about some of those creepy, kind of unexplainable kind of things. Do you buy into that? Do you buy into spirits? Do you buy into the afterlife?
Yeah,
Anything
I
like
mean,
that
I
at
guess
all?
I do a bit, but I'm not necessarily afraid when it comes to me that they're going to do anything, because I don't know. I feel like if you're afraid, then that's when they're going to get you. But if you're not, then they won't.
I like that philosophy.
I love
like
it.
that.
I love it that he even
That's what-
says, they'll get you if you're afraid. But if you're not afraid, you're fine.
Yeah.
But if you're afraid, you're fucked.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want to watch it. If I don't watch
And
it,
I'll get pissed with them if I feel like there's something, like if I hear a creepy noise or the lights flicking on or whatever, then I'll be like, get the hell out of here. This isn't your house. What the fuck you doing?
God damn it, I'm trying to sleep.
Seriously.
You with the fucking lights.
you better not have fangs and white eyes or I'm going to be really upset.
But I mean, I there's this creepy story my sister told me about her friend one time, and this was here in Cedar Rapids. I think her friend was like sleeping in bed with her mom. That's not the weird part, but they lived in this weird house, and the mom fell asleep, and the daughter was like still up, and there was like the door was like cracked to the room, kind of like that or whatever, and then the daughter like saw this like weird creepy thing like walk by or whatever. And then she's like, oh my God. And then the creepy thing like walked by again. And then it like stopped in the doorway, like looking in at the door at her. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden it like zoomed in, got right like into her face. Yeah. And then she was like, oh my God, and covered up and everything and stuff. So she was like so freaked out or whatever. But so that was one of the weird, freaky stories.
Dude,
don't like it.
here's
I
the
just-
plan.
I don't like
here's
it. I don't
here's
like
the
it.
goddamn plan. Pay attention. We have to bring either Little Mermaid or some other childish, funny, silly comedy, maybe So I Married an Axe Murderer, so that when we are done with Samantha Harris, we can watch something funny, silly, childlike, or else I won't
Or
be able
no,
to
maybe that's
sleep.
just a good strategy to do to begin with. Bring something goofy with you, like something just that makes
We
kind
should
of
bring,
look silly.
we should
or
bring Tim with us.
Weird.
One of those
Yeah.
cow cans.
Yeah. No, that's creepy. Because if that thing starts going off when you're not tipping it, that's not going to be
you
good.
turn it over, it's like, I'm going to fucking kill you.
Why did you take
Oh.
something innocent and turn it into something so horrible?
We should bring Tim with us.
So it can't be that. But yeah, maybe something like a funny, just something that like reminds me of something happy, you know? Bring that like with you, like your kid's toy or something weird, you know, like you were saying. And
I like your outfit.
I'm gonna bring
It's not
my-
true.
you know what?
It's not true.
I'm
It's
going to
not
bring
true.
my laptop with this podcast on it so that I can watch it and laugh and be like, oh, thank you, Tim.
yeah, and
Thank you so much.
I have some holy water if you want. My mom went to Fatima or whatever. There's like apparently the
Yeah.
Virgin Mary appeared in Fatima. And
Fatima,
I think it's near
Wisconsin?
France or something.
Oh,
I think it's
okay.
near France. I don't know.
France. Okay.
Yeah, and there's like this water that people. That this was back in like 1950 or something like that, or something supposedly.
Nice.
And all these people got healed and stuff. And so my mom brought back like jugs of this stuff, and like you could
Tim, drink
nowadays you
this.
Go there, yeah. And so
Click.
Yeah.
I could give you some of that, you know, if that helps you on your journey, and can feel that.
We're just looking forward to a unique experience. She's a very sweet looking lady and very nice and down to earth, and so it's just all of a sudden we're like we
I
start
think
getting
it'll be-
creeped out very quickly.
Yeah, well, and you want to. I mean, why would you want to go there and not be too creeped out? Wouldn't be worth the experience.
the
Yeah,
stick, yeah, I get you.
I'm driving 9 hours. I want my bang for my buck. I want to be traumatized.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a little bit of creeped outness, but you got to have a way to like.
Todd is like, no.
No,
You know,
I don't. That'd be
Maybe
No,
that
I-
lady from Saturday Night Live where you get nervous and sniff fingers or whatever.
superstar.
When I was in Montana, there was this place called, and that's kind of by where I broke down, the Deer Lodge Prison. And it was like this old abandoned prison
Christ.
that you could take a tour of, but they didn't have like a guy that walked you around. You just walk around yourself through this old prison or whatever and stuff. And that was pretty creepy. That was like,
Well, people at my CrossFit gym were saying, "Are you
sounds
scared?"
really
I was
fucking
telling about
creepy.
it. Are you scared? I was like, "No." And they said, "What was that one show on MTV?" I was like, "Fear." On MTV,
Fear.
where they took you and they dumped you
Yeah, they-
somewhere, and you
they-
fucking sat there all night long.
Right.
Insane asylums.
They put it like a bag. Didn't they put a bag over their head?
No, but they put them in areas. Like they put somebody down in the execution chamber.
Yeah.
And some guy is sitting there and he hears noises. And I'm like, that just would not go
where
where
else you could go is supposedly there's a haunted place here in Iowa. Maybe you could ask
Right
this lady
in
about it.
Palo.
Villisca. It's Villisca, Iowa. This guy supposedly like spent some time in the attic, and then once this family got home, he like murdered them all there. But people go and pay like $200 to $300 to stay one night in this house or whatever that's like haunted now.
Villisca axe and murder scenes.
Now, have you
Oh
heard of
my
the 13?
God.
Have you heard of 13 Steps in Palo?
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one too. Yeah.
There's a spot in Palo, Iowa. That's
Oh my God.
what?
Villisca axe murder house.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think he was lying. I'm just saying, kind of caught me off guard. I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
So that one's like supposed to be one of the real.
Murdered in their
One of the real
beds.
deals.
The History Channel even did a story on that one or something like that. You know, those ghost shows that they have or whatever. The History Channel even went there.
Yeah, I brought
Holy
this.
shit,
I brought
this
this
is
up at
legit.
work yesterday, and I thought people would just be like, "Oh, that'll be fun. I'll listen to that. That'd be great." So many fucking
stories.
came out. People, guys that used to be police officers that are now doing my job. They're like, we were on call and we went out and it took 5. I'm trying to think of how many people. 5 to 7 officers, grown ass men, to hold down a 14-year-old girl this priest was performing exorcism on her.
Well,
And one guy quit. Boom. The next day, one officer quit. I'm done. I'm
was so
done.
creepy.
Well,
It's so fucking
there was
creepy.
the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, or I think that was the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And supposedly the story behind that is it was supposed to be based on a true story, and so like, man, she's getting possessed. But then in her times of not being possessed, supposedly she was visited by the Virgin Mary or whatever, and the Virgin Mary said you can continue to be possessed or not, and the reason that she chose to continue to be possessed was because she thought it would bring light to religion and God and stuff like that, and this would be a way to help get people so chic. So some of that stuff,
And
I feel
that
like
was
if
in the
you,
movie, right? That
Yeah,
was in
and
the
I
movie.
feel like some of that's kind of how I feel. Like if you can allow yourself to be, and if you don't want to be, it's sort of up to you. So
You're
that's
open
why
to
I
those
don't.
things.
That's why I don't really freak out about
That
it.
was a very scary movie. Anthony Hopkins was in that movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
God, that was a good movie because I don't like scary movies, obviously, but that movie in particular was creepy and scary, but I had a great message to it that I really enjoyed. So it wasn't quite just
Another
a freak
great
show
actor that was
kind
in
of
that
thing.
movie was also from Dexter.
Well,
Oh
this
shit,
is-
he was the young
Dex-
priest, wasn't he?
No. Dexter's sister. She was the girl that was possessed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
This is a little bit sort of off topic, but similar to the same
it.
topic. But it's just one of my favorite stories, and it's since we're talking about demons, this is sort of the opposite way to go, and it's not really anything. There's no angel or something involved, but it's just a story I like to tell. My mom and dad, they had went to St. Pat's kindergarten together here in town, and they didn't really know each other or chat much, and they only went to kindergarten. My dad stayed at that school. My mom went on to another school. Years later, my mom becomes a nurse at Mercy Hospital. My dad's brother goes into the hospital for some reason or whatever and is a patient there, and my mom is waiting on him being a nurse, and she says, "Hey, your last name's Sullivan. I think I remember you from kindergarten or whatever at St. Pat's." And then he says, "Oh, no, I never went to kindergarten there. My brother went to kindergarten there." And she's like, "Oh." So my dad comes in to visit my brother in the hospital. My uncle in the hospital. My uncle says, "Hey, you know, that nurse was asking about you or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, really?" So my dad eventually gets up some courage and asks out, you know, what turns out to be my mom, the nurse or whatever. And so eventually they get married, you know, have 12 kids. But before they have any kids or whatever, they move in together. And my dad's parents call my mom and say, "Hey, would you come get this box over at our house? It's got like his old stuff from when he was a kid or whatever." So my mom comes and gets this box. Now, I forgot to tell you this early part of the story. 1 year when my mom was like 10 or 12 years old, she went to church at St. Pat's. She had got this rosary from her mom for Christmas, and it was like this really unique silver rosary. And then my mom ended up losing it at the church. She just lost it, and she never saw it again. It was like the first time she ever took it to church with her that Christmas, and lost it
Boom,
that
lost
Christmas
it.
at church. And she really liked it and was sad about it. So years later, when she's moved in with my dad, and her and my dad are married, my mom opens up this box, and she's going through some things, and she finds this really unique silver rosary, and she's like, "Oh my God, where did you ever get something like this? This is really unique." And my dad said, "Well, when I was a kid, I used to clean the church after Mass and everything, and I was sweeping the floor one day, and after Christmas Mass, I found this really unique silver rosary, or found the silver rosary, and I've just always kept it since then." And it turns out it was the same rosary that my mom had lost when she was like 10 or 12 years old, and then they had never known
Holy
each other and had
cow.
gotten married, and then eventually found that, and so it was pretty crazy.
What?
That's a great story.
That's a wonderful, wonderful story,
Forget
man.
about the demonologist.
No wonder
Holy
why they
cow.
have 12 kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Love you a long time. Yeah, for sure.
Why'd you have to do that? to
I'm
it?
sorry. I didn't
You
mean
took
I
something
wasn't
that was
trying to-
beautiful and clean and precious
I'm
and
sorry,
unique,
Tim. I
and
did
then
not-
you Asianized it. You Asian porned it.
Okay, I
Maybe that's what we
apologize.
should do with
I
everything.
apologize. Yeah, Asian-
Everything should, maybe when you get
It was a
there with the
great
demon,
story.
you
I
could-
did not mean to take it down.
good
You know what? Yeah,
So-
tomorrow we'll Asian porn Samantha. Well, that
I'm not sure the
that
podcast
sounded
will last long.
horrible. All right, don't take that the wrong way, Samantha.
Edit. How about we just say that right there? Just get rid of
No,
that shit. Oh
that's
my
the-
god!
Listen,
Don't bury
somebody-
it. Don't bury the lead. How's that sound?
By the time this airs, we'll have already done our
Yeah.
podcast.
Or
And
no one
it's-
will ever
listen.
heard from you guys again.
Thank you. That's much
Yeah.
more likely. I
And
think,
by the
at this
way,
point.
our location, our route, and where we will be staying will be told to my wife. All right? Just know this.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, if people want to see your comedy or see what's going on with you, what's the best way to find you?
a couple
guys?
different ways. Basically, first of all, you can go to my website, which is timsullivancomedy.com. And there you can have links to my Facebook, YouTube, and email. But if you want to find my Facebook in particular, it's just facebook.com/Tim Sullivan Comedian. And if you want to find me on Twitter, then it's just @TheTimSullivan.
At the Tim Sullivan. Nice.
Or
Okay.
like I said, timsullivancomedy.com is my website. You find everything
Well,
from there.
I think that I'm probably gonna buy
You're gonna
that
do the
$260 package
Saget
deal at Riverside because that's fun. I think it's fun to go down there and watch my
Yeah,
wife.
if we get a bunch of people all
Hey.
staying down, that'd be a good time, right?
Yeah, let me ask you
that'd be
something.
awesome.
When you start off, when you are headlining, or when you, what the fuck am I trying to think of? When
I
you
don't know.
start, when you're starting for Bill Saget,
Bob
Is it
Saget.
Bob Saget. Sorry, Jesus Christ, Bob Saget. When you're done, do you get to come down and hang out? And
Yeah, I'll probably. Initially, while he's on stage, I'll probably either stay in the back area or watch from the side of the stage or something like that. And then, yeah, after it's over, then hang out with everybody. I'll try to get Bob Saget to do it too.
Well, if I go, I'll buy you both some drinks. That'd be awesome. Hang out.
Just he says might. I'll be there,
But don't.
so he
I'm
can.
just,
he
I
can-
can't
you
speak
can-
for my lady.
But don't
if you're
fuck
gonna be
Bob
there,
Saget's
that's
daughter. Don't you dare fuck Bob Saget's daughter.
Is she hot?
No.
Awesome. Oh my God, are we gonna Asian porn Bob
Well,
Saget?
we don't know how old she is. I think she's plenty old now. But
I'm sure
But
she's
on
fun.
the-
I was like, why am I?
But on the Entourage, on that Entourage, you were talking about Bob Saget was on Entourage, and he comes over to the Entourage house, and he's supposed to be their neighbor, and he's like, "Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Bob Saget or whatever." And like, yeah, and he's like, "And I live next door, and don't you dare fuck my daughters, don't you?"
I thought he was
that's
somehow going to bring
fantastic.
in this Asian porn thing that we started.
No, that's just us.
Is
He's
that
much
gonna be-
more high class.
Could
than
that
we
possibly
are, for sure.
be a new stick?
No, let's
us?
not let it be a new stick.
Asian porn it?
No, it's not
All
good.
right.
It's not a good look.
Hey, anyway, if you like this podcast, and I hope you did, however you stumbled across it, copy the link, Facebook it, email it to your friends so that other people can see it. And if you want more experiences, or you want to see what else we've done with the Primal Scream podcast, or you want to see who have sponsored us, who we like, who could possibly be coming up on our upcoming shows, where would they go, Todd?
God, you drink less than I did. Go to theprimalscream.org. That's the best way to get a hold of us. While you're on there, you can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter, Stitcher, Instagram, Pinterest.
Yeah.
Whatever
And,
new social media that's going to pop up with vaginas on it. I have no idea.
I'm going to try to get Mick Foley here to come on your podcast.
Oh, it'll be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You listen, if he's going to be around here, we're willing to travel. So we'll travel around. If he's going to be somewhere close by, we'll meet him somewhere and be happy to
Yeah,
interview him. It'll be fun.
I never thought that I would be so just in awe of how almost insane someone has to put themselves into a position to jump off a fucking cage. I get nervous going off the fucking high board at the pool.
Yeah,
and
and
I'm
if
going
anybody
into
is
water.
listening to this and doesn't know who Mick Foley is and doesn't know exactly what we're talking about, all you got to basically do is YouTube Mick Foley Hell in the Cell versus Undertaker or any combination of that, and you'll be able to see all that crazy footage. It's ridiculous.
Well, and I'm going to promote Tim here too. Walking on stage is like walking into the cell, and putting yourself out there is pretty impressive. And we
Fucking ballsy.
we gave Doug some kudos too, because we couldn't imagine. I mean, I've spoken in front of a couple hundred people before, but that's like giving a speech, not just getting up there and laying my balls lay out on the floor and
Waiting
see
for
what
somebody to
happens.
smash 'em.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a whole different story right there. So.
Utmost respect for comedians. So thank you very much. I really
appreciate it,
appreciate you coming
Thanks,
in today.
Tim. We had a great time.
Yeah, it was fun.
I had
We'll have to do it again.
Awesome time. Hey, I'm Matt,
I'm Todd.
and we'll see you later.
Adios.
Good night.
That's it.
You're like 4 foot taller than him.